It's day number 2. I got Jake Morley. I got a whole slew of guests coming. I'm Jacob Westendorf here. It's a special edition of the draft party. Andrew, hit it.
I love gold.
Let me down. There we go. Freaking rookies. Welcome, guys, to the draft party. It's day 2. The NFL draft. The Green Bay Packers selected Eric Stokes, cornerback out of Georgia last night. I'm your host this evening. I'm Jacob Westendorf, as I always am of this episode. And I am joined by the great Jake Morley. Jacob Morley, not in his usual recording spot, as he noted earlier. His hair does not look like Matt LaFleur's like it usually does. But we're here and we're going to talk some drafts. So, Jake, how are we feeling?
Well, I think as you just pointed out, Jacob, it's been a weird 48 hours, man. We've been in the DMs with a lot of different people talking what the heck is going on with this team. But other than that, I'm good. How are you?
The draft is fun. I enjoy it every year. The last 2 years have been very stressful for day 1 of the draft, but I think there's enough people in the world that are going to focus on the quarterback, and I'm not going to do that. I'm already a little bummed, a little upset, a little disappointed, whatever phrasing you want to use, that Eric Stokes' night was overshadowed. And I'm not going to allow that to happen when the Packers pick Asante Samuel and Trevon Merrick today and just watch the world burn. So let's get into it a little bit, Jake. Last night, obviously, the Packers are on the clock. They come to 29. And who did you think they were taking?
I thought they were going to take the kid that just went off the board, Elijah Moore. And, there goes one of my crushes. I thought they were going to take Elijah Moore. And I just thought everything we had heard, all the smoke coming out of Green Bay was wide receiver. And, they didn't take him. And here we are looking at one in round 2, maybe. Just to walk through it as well, like I'm thinking it's going to be Bateman, right? I really would have, if you would have said, hey, if you want to gamble some money, who is the pick going to be? I would have said Rashad Bateman, no matter what. They're not leaving round 1 without Rashad Bateman. And he got picked 2 spots in front of, 2 spots in front of him. Kind of the second year in a row that I think the guy that they really wanted, the guy they really wanted to go out and get, went right before them. So at that point, I'm thinking, okay, it's got to be Elijah Moore then. It's got to be Elijah Moore because I think it's got to be wide receiver. And they went with Eric Stokes, who is a really good player, right? Like, I don't want to get lost in that. Eric Stokes is a really good football player. And he's a kid that made a lot of sense for Green Bay. And we talked about him leading up to the draft. We talked about him a lot, as a guy that could potentially be the pick. But I still was surprised when it was him, just because I was so locked in on wide receiver with everything that had been going on that day. So it was interesting, and I think I was shook. I was a little bit shook when everything went down the way it did, and then Eric Stokes. And it took me a little bit last night to kind of get on board with it. But I'm very much on board with it. And it didn't take me that long, truthfully. So that's who I thought the pick would be. And as I typically do, I just answered your question and said like a million different things. But to kick it back to you, Jacob, who did you think the pick was going to be?
I thought it was going to be an offensive tackle or Elijah Moore. I was not surprised that they went corner. I guess Stokes was one of those dudes that was on the radar at the very beginning. And then we kind of, I think, forgot about him as we got into everything. And then they bring in the cornerback after, an entire week of wide receiver smoke. And I think all of us were just kind of thinking about that. And I'm going to pull in Paul Brettel here of Dairyland Express, Cheesehead TV, Packers Unrestricted podcast, all kinds of stuff Paul's doing these days. But Paul, we're talking about Eric Stokes, the Packers' first round pick, and just who we thought it was going to be when they were on the board. And my thing about it is also the Packers' biggest need coming into this draft was the cornerback position. And I think what happened was we all thought that, and a vast majority, the vocal majority thought that before going into last night. And then you have the wide receiver smoke, if you will, come out the entire week. And then everybody is disappointed the second it's not a wide receiver. Now, here's just a couple things real quick. I'm not going to acknowledge the ridiculousness that comes with it. I don't care that they haven't spent a first round pick on a wide receiver in Aaron Rodgers' career. That's not that big of a deal to me. I don't care about a lot of that stuff. And no, the most ridiculous thing I saw, and I can't remember who said it was, this is an act of war against Aaron Rodgers because it wasn't a receiver.
An act of war in the making since 2003.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but whatever. That's not the point. And like I mentioned at the top of the show here, we're not going to spend all night talking about the quarterback and the Packers doing everything they can to make him happy, because I just don't care about that. I don't. And I talked about it enough yesterday, so I'm not going to do it today. That's just the way it is. So, Paul, the Packers take Eric Stokes. Who did you think they were going to pick when they were on the clock? And then ultimately, what was your thoughts once Stokes was off the board?
So initially, and to humbly pat myself on the back a little bit, I went through an educated guesswork looking at recent trends, and I came down to an eight-player pool that they were going to pick from in the first round. That was as low as I could reasonably get it without just taking someone out for the sake of taking someone out. And I did have Eric Stokes in there. And if we look at it, it's because he checks every box that the Packers love. He plays a premier position, super athletic. We all know the 4.25 40 time, has good size, experience, a younger player, just turned 22. I mean, all those boxes are checked as far as what the Green Bay Packers are looking for. And this year, it happens to coincide with what is a position in need. It's a position in need in 2021 to try to upgrade the position. But, I mean, we look ahead to 2022 before this pick. The only cornerback on the roster that we could say he's going to be here next year is Jair Alexander. So there's just it just made a lot of sense as far as what the Packers have done under Gutekunst and just traditionally how they operate to make this selection. I did, in that list that I did add Rashad Bateman to it because of all the smoke. Like, I just couldn't resist it. And I do wonder what the Green Bay Packers would have done had both of them been there, if they would have went that route. But this just felt like a very Packers-y type of pick. And also, he's someone who can right away contribute on special teams. That's something else that they will, look for in that regard. So it just felt like a very Packers-y selection. And to check another box, a little under the radar as well. He wasn't someone who
selection as well.
Heavily.
Want to welcome a friend of the program from above the border, Canadian, apparently still on the side of Aaron Rodgers. So there we have it. Ryan Bowman, now of Game On Wisconsin, joining the show tonight. Ryan, talking now about Eric Stokes, the Packers' first selection last night. Just a bit of a recap real quick for everybody. Players that have recently gone off the board. Landon Dickerson, offensive lineman, just went to the Philadelphia Eagles. Javon Holland to the Miami Dolphins, which will cause Jake Morley to weep. And then you have the Patriots have just traded up to select Christian Barmore, the defensive lineman out of Alabama. And guys, Elijah Moore is the one pick that I think everybody's seeing that was maybe hoping right now that could have a chance to fall to Green Bay. I mean, I don't think that's ever going to happen, but that's where we're at now as far as that goes. But Ryan, to get back to the Packers pick, they were on the clock. It's Eric Stokes. When they're on the clock, who are you thinking they were going to take? And once they took Stokes, what is your thought process?
I thought there was a couple of guys on the board that they would have taken before Eric Stokes. Tevin Jenkins was a guy that I really liked. Elijah Moore was somebody that I think a lot of people were clamoring for. So, I like the pick, though. I think Eric Stokes is a really good football player, super athletic. I mean, checks all the boxes on Brian Gutekunst's typical, thresholds that he's looking for, whether that be athletically, age, measurables. He hits all the checks there. So watching some of his film, I mean, I think he's a perfect complement to Jair Alexander. Might be a little bit of development there before he's able to usurp a guy like Kevin King, but I think halfway through the year we should be talking about him probably starting opposite Jair. So pretty happy. It's a position of need too. So I mean, anybody that says you got to draft weapons for Aaron Rodgers in the first round, I think this team needed a cornerback today more than anything, and tomorrow more than anything. So they kind of hit both right there for me.
Yeah, I think I said this before you came in, and the big thing that I think happened was we were all, not all of us obviously, but I think we were pretty set on, especially right after the NFC Championship game, what's everybody saying? Find somebody across from Jair Alexander. And then all that receiver smoke between Monday and Thursday night happened, and then everybody went, oh yeah, they're finally going to take a receiver in the first round. I was like, okay. Looking back, I mean, I bought into it. I predicted them to take Rashad Bateman. They didn't. I think they would have had he been on the board, but they took Eric Stokes. And I think Peter Bukowski says this on Locked On Packers all the time. The easiest path for the Packers to improve from last year's team to this year's team, assuming everyone's back, is a cornerback taking that role. And I think that, like you mentioned, Ryan, when we go back to when Jair was the selection at 18th overall, he didn't start right away. Tremont Williams and Devon House were the starters, and they figured out pretty quickly that Alexander was better than, frankly, both of those guys. But Alexander got in the lineup. What you're hoping for if you're Stokes, Paul mentioned this too, can he play on special teams right away? I think the answer to that question is yes. And can he eventually play across Alexander? I won't be surprised if he doesn't start to open the season, but if he moves ahead of Kevin King by midpoint of the year, I think you're feeling pretty good about that potential situation. So I'm not surprised. I won't be surprised if they get another defensive back or something like that today. The Chicago Bears have just traded up to pick 39. So their pick is in. They traded with Carolina. They gave up their 3rd round pick and a 6th round pick this year to get the 39th pick and a 5 this year. So Ryan Pace being aggressive. Let's talk about that, because last night with the quarterback situations playing out the way that they did, some people opine that we may look back on last night in 10 years as the pivot point for two franchises. One team that has never had a quarterback, the Chicago Bears, and a team like the Green Bay Packers, it feels like, has always had a quarterback. Paul, what are your thoughts on the Bears being aggressive and going up and getting Justin Fields?
I mean, I think it makes perfect sense for this regime. I mean, how much longer do Pace and Matt Nagy have to try to make something happen in Chicago? They have a talented roster. The defense has been very good, and really the piece that's been missing is the quarterback position. They both have that black eye for trading up and taking Trubisky over Mahomes and Watson. So really it made a ton of sense to me that they did it, because they really don't have any options. You know who you are with Andy Dalton. You know what you're going to get with him. It's not a playoff team unless a bunch of things happen to fall very perfectly for the Bears. And for Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy, this is it. They pretty much got to make the playoffs this year, you would think anyways, from the outside looking in, to have their jobs coming in 2022. So it made a lot of sense. Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say the Bears just jumped in. They took Tevin Jenkins, so they get a bodyguard now for Justin Fields. So a lot of people thought that might have been the Packers pick.
That was absolutely, and that was an important pick for them too, because that offensive line is very, very suspect at best. So that was another good selection on their part. But no, I wasn't surprised at all. This regime, they got to win now, and if they don't in this year, they're probably out.
That they are. Jake, just real quick, I know you said you got to bounce here in a little bit, but just looking at Chicago, what they've done so far, and what do you expect Green Bay to do tonight? What are your thoughts on tonight? They have 2 picks tonight if they don't move at all.
Oh, I think the consensus is right. They're going to take the top tackle and they're going to take the top wide receiver, and that's going to be what it is. Who that'll be, I don't know. I don't know who that'll be. I don't know who's going to be on the board late. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Green Bay move up. If there's someone there that they love, I think the fact that, Goody said last night that they did contemplate trading back, and that should tell you that means they have a lot of players on the board that they like still. You looking into that range, it depends what they're willing to give up. They package both those 4th round picks, and you're looking at, maybe Indianapolis being a dance partner again, in the early 50s, 54, I think is what it is. If you throw the 3rd and a 4th in there, they can move up more, probably in the mid 40s type range and a few picks here. But it will depend. It will depend to see kind of what goes on the next few picks here. And I personally, I would like to see them come away with really a 2nd tier type wide receiver in this year's draft class. Just because I know last year this kind of happened to them, where they're like, all right, let's sit and wait. And the draft never found them. The guys that they really, I think, wanted last year, they just never found them. And that happens sometimes. So we'll see, though, man. I'm excited to see who the 2 newest Green Bay Packers will be this year.
And I was just going to say, to piggyback off what you said about trading up, I think that's really – I mean, they have 9 picks.
Yeah.
And on Monday, Gutekunst's press conference, didn't he allude to some uncertainty once you get to the mid to later rounds just because of the COVID restrictions, opt-outs, all that stuff. So those picks might not be valued as much either, and if they can pass them off to move up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I'll be curious to see how they do that. He's Jake Morley. You can catch him with me on the Gold Zone on Wednesday night. We're going to try and get him back when the Packers are on the clock, but obviously that remains to be seen. Jake, appreciate you for joining us, and then go find out what Aaron Rodgers is doing, I guess.
I'll text him. All right.
Yeah,
I'll be back. I'll come back on for the pick. So you just let me know when you need me.
All right. Jake will be back later. That's Jake Morley. Like I mentioned, you can follow him on Twitter at Jacob Morley, and a lot of good stuff there. So guys, we talked about trading up, and the Atlanta Falcons pick is about to come in here at pick number 40. And I've yet to see who that is. So once we have it, I'll let you guys know. But I think that the Falcons have actually taken Richie Grant, the safety, out of Central Florida. So the Trevon Merrick dream for the Packers is still alive, if anybody was alive. But there's a lot of things going on. So if the Packers, let's just say right now for round 2, we know who's been taken. Green Bay's 21 picks away. That's probably not in the area of where you can trade up just yet. I mean, they could, I suppose, but I don't think they would, unless there's just somebody they absolutely had to have in that position. Then I don't think they would. But let's talk about some potential trade-up targets that are still on the board. Paul, I have put you in Brian Gutekunst's chair. Some people might think that's a good thing. But who are you targeting if you're trading up right now? Pick 41 is on the clock. So in the next couple of picks.
You'll have to bear with me on best available, but a couple players in the 40 range that are still there, I believe, that I like are Liam Eichenberg, Dylan Radins. The offensive tackle position, I think it's a higher need for me than maybe some folks have talked about it quite a bit this offseason. I just have such a concern about the depth of position. We don't know where Nijman's at, and adding a potential day one starter, it gives them the flexibility to kick Elton Jenkins back inside. So now we're not relying on Ben Braden or Simon Stepaniak to start week 1. And like I said on Wednesday's show with you, maybe they're ready, but from our vantage point, there's nothing to suggest that. So, and then looking ahead to 2022, Turner's status, we don't know. So we saw the NFL, the game has changed over the years, but games are still won and lost in the trenches. We saw it in the NFC Championship. We saw it in the Super Bowl. So I am all for solidifying that offensive line position. However, while you can't necessarily predict how the board's going to fall, and it may be a top priority, but it might not end up working out that way, like we just talked about receiver last year, perhaps if they don't address it, or if their selection is an interior offensive lineman, that could be our tell that, hey, they must like Elton Jenkins out at tackle and think that that's where he's going to be moving forward, because they already have some interior options, whereas the tackle position's thin. So those 2 players are on my radar, closer to 62 if they hang around. Brady Christensen from BYU can play left tackle, right tackle. I know Ben Fennell, he's talked about how he's really just an ideal fit for the wide zone running scheme that the Packers run. So he's someone else on my radar as well. And then receivers, big fan of De'Ami Brown. Downfield threat, but he can work the slant route as well. And if you can win downfield and run a mean slant, you're going to be an impact player in the NFL in year one. So those are a couple guys I have my eyes on at the moment.
Sure feels that way. Lambo Labo pointed out Trevon Merrick still on the board. Yes, I'm aware. Let's not talk about it. Ryan, let's talk about trading up here. The Lions pick is coming up. They're at pick number 41. They took Penei Sewell last night, so they add to their offensive line here. And the Lions are going to grab something here. We're not sure yet. The whole draft is kind of happening as we go through things here. So the Lions have selected defensive tackle Levi Onwuzurike. So 2 defensive linemen in the first 10 picks tonight after none went in the first round last night. But Ryan, as we know here, there are a few guys still on the board that you may be interested in and others may be interested in. So my question I'm asking now is, if Green Bay is to move up, where are you looking?
So, I mean, Paul mentioned a couple of really good candidates there in those offensive tackles. I think if you see one of them come off the board and they're worried about a run, they could for sure come up for one of those guys. Another tackle, Sam Cosmi, super athletic tackle that I think, is rumored that
Stop. Samuel Cosmi stinks. And this is
As
me.
much.
Did I just come on and trigger you immediately? Like I've been here for like 10 minutes.
Here's my thing. I understand the needs for athleticism. I understand he hits the Packers theoretical profile. I do not like finesse offensive linemen. As somebody who played the position at a very low, crappy level and wasn't good, I
appreciate your honesty.
I am. I mean, I wasn't any good. Come on, guys. I know the deal. Like, I played high school football at a small ass private school and probably only played because I went to a small ass private school. I get it. It's fine. I don't care. That being said, toughness to me is something that I very much value at the collegiate and the professional level. And I've seen when the Packers have taken some of these guys. Jason Spriggs is a very good example, and I'm not trying to compare the players, but that's a very good example of somebody that I don't think the toughness was there. And it's just something that Ben Fennell said something to me a while ago that really stuck out to me. And no, Lambo, that's not true. That is not true. Owen would bury my face in the dirt and step on me on the way out. But I just think that what he said that stuck with me was toughness matters, and I value that. And I think NFL teams do too. And
I'm not sure I would take him. I just think he checks all the boxes of what the Packers look for in those offensive linemen.
So let me present this question to you then,
okay,
because everybody points to the raw athletic score, whatever the hell it's called, RAS scores. Well, I don't know what it's short for. I know what it is, obviously, but so everybody points to that. What gives you the impression that Brian Gutekunst, who has passed on similar players like Andre Dillard and Ezra Cleveland, and has not really picked it? If you want to call Cole Madison that a 5th round guard, then maybe, but he wasn't that high level, high octane athlete. The offensive lineman he's taken, Simon Stepaniak, a nail spitting guard. Elton Jenkins, not a finesse guy, relative athletic score. Thank you. Who are the other offensive line? Jake Hansen. I'll give you that one.
John Runyon.
That one, but again, a 6th round flyer. And John Runyon, he's John Runyon Sr.'s son. Did you guys watch John Runyon Sr. play? Not a finesse guy. So the follow-up question I have to you is, what gives you then the impression that Gutekunst would be interested in something like that?
Well, I think those are all interior guys first and foremost, and that is something that is, probably what you want in terms of your road grader interior offensive linemen. When you get out onto the edge, especially in today's day and age where, it's not the left tackle anymore that's protecting your
correct.
Quarterback from the pass rushers. They'll flip them over on the other side and off we go. We look no further than the NFC Championship game against Tampa Bay. So, I think there is an increased value when you get out into those tackle spots, and athleticism is a bigger separator when you get into that position. But I mean, there is other guys on the board. I would go ahead. I mean, if Eichenberg and who was the other guy on there?
Ravens. Eichenberg just went to the Dolphins.
Tevin Jenkins is off the board. So if they feel like, the gap between what's left on the tackles isn't that big anymore, I see a couple of guys still on the board from the wide receiver perspective that I love. De'Ambi Brown was one that was already mentioned. I love Rondale Moore. You and I were talking about this on Twitter the other day. Maybe a bit rich for the first round. Wouldn't be for me. I love the guy, but sitting here on day 2, if he starts creeping into the high 40s, early 50s, like I'm probably starting to make a call there. And then, if they wanted to stand pat and they think they can get a similar player sitting at 62, I really like Amari Rodgers. I really feel like this offense is missing one piece, which is that gadget, jet motion, jack of all trades type of offensive weapon. So whether they trade up for a De'Ambi Brown or a Rondale Moore, or they stand pat for a guy like Amari Rodgers, I'd be pretty stoked with that in the first round. There goes Eichenberg too. So
Liam Eichenberg just went to the Miami Dolphins. The San Francisco 49ers have traded with
A lot
the
of
Vegas
trades.
Raiders and are now on the clock. Trades, yes, absolutely flying. A couple thank yous to some guys in the chat. First of all, Peter, welcome. You're at every show, so I appreciate that. My man Luke Ritchie, thank you. Joe Flacco, president of that fan club. Lambo Labo, obviously, a big-time guy here that's always here with us as well. Send your questions in the chat. Let us know you want to talk about. So we're talking trade-ups. The Packers right now are slated to pick at 62. The 43rd overall pick is on the clock, so 19 slots. Anybody who follows me on Twitter, Trayvon Merrick's my guy. You guys know that? That's been discussed several times over. I even paid someone to do a jersey swap for me so I could pin it to my Twitter. So, I love him. I think he's fantastic. I think he's a really good player. Michael, welcome from Texas. Fred Thurston, some Packers royalty in the house tonight. Freddie, hopping in here. Matt, trades, and more trades. That's absolutely correct as well. No, I would not say he's my son, Lambo Labo. That is a distinction for Mr. Gary and Rashawn Gary alone at this point. But Asante Samuel Jr., I was going to get to that here in a minute. It says ASJ no matter what. First of all, I love the play on the movie Draft Day. It is one of my favorites. Bad movies ever. I watch it every year the night before the draft since it's come out. The scene of I want all my picks back, all of them, and David Putney because I feel like it is fantastic. I love it. I love everything about it. I think the Packers now, it would set the world on fire if they traded up for a defensive back.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
I don't care. Like I don't care. Like I talked about at the top of the show, I view the team through the lens of what's best for the Packers, not what's best for somebody sitting behind me tonight. So, especially if you're going to call his bluff and he's not going to be there. So you got to do what's best for the team. Mm-hmm. And I am not acquiescing to one player, very similar to the way that I wouldn't have acquiesced to Brett Favre once upon a time. So the world would be set on fire if they took a DB, but if you have a secondary of Alexander and Stokes pans out and Asante Samuel pans out as your slot corner, daddy, like, oh my God, how good could that secondary be? Now, of course, if they don't pan out, then it looks like Demarius Randall and Quentin Rollins all over again. But I don't know. That's one guy I would move up for. As far as the receivers, I wouldn't move for any of them. I know Terrace Marshall's a popular name. I wouldn't draft him. Just me personally. Like I said, when I mentioned valuing toughness earlier, he has medical red flags. That's not a toughness problem. Opting out before they went to play Alabama rubs me the wrong way. And if that's something that Gutekunst and LaFleur have decided they can live with, then I'm open to it. But just based on what I know, not somebody that I would draft. So if that's the move range that we're looking in here, I honestly right now, I think the value in this draft right now is on defense. I mentioned Merrick still on the board. I mentioned Asante Samuel still on the board. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is still on the board. And that's somebody that I wouldn't have taken him at 29, but if they can grab him, sign me up, at this point of the draft as well. So Paul, I know I promised you 30 minutes and you've got a wife and a child to take care of and all kinds of stuff. So Paul is going to sign off here, but Paul, go ahead and let the people know where we can find you and what you plan on doing here through the rest of the weekend.
I appreciate you having me, Jacob. You can find me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find my work, Dairyland Express, Cheesehead TV. As far as what we got coming, just commenting, giving brain dumps, all my thoughts on what happens this weekend. So check it out. I do appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right, that's Paul Brettel.
Appreciate it, Ben.
Oh, geez. I don't know about we and lumping all of us into there for that. So the Raiders are on the clock right now at 43, and Gruden and Mike Mayock are hugging each other. So, that's always a good thing.
So it's probably somebody we've never heard of at this point, because they go way off the radar.
They do. Like. They're that team that, as much shit as people give the Packers about not doing what you think they should do. The Raiders every year, like Cleveland Farrell, 4th overall, Damon Arnett. Last night they took, which I love Alex Leatherwood. So I am not going to complain at all about Alex Leatherwood for them. I think he's a fantastic player. So I don't care about the rest of that stuff. And frankly, one of my legitimate beefs with the draft is when people say, "Oh, he was a 3rd round player." Like, Matt, you're fired.
Like, no, this man. He's where he was drafted. He's where that team evaluated him. And, there is like the think tank of the industrial draft complex that, you just start to see the opinions kind of meld into one universal thought process. But we don't really know how any team values players, and teams value players differently. The Raiders value your guy, Trevon Moehrig. They just snagged him.
My heart is now broken. So we just said all that shit about the Raiders, and now here he went.
And then they go and make an amazing pick. Yeah, I mean, I would have been comfortable with him at 29 if Moehrig was the pick at 29. I would have been happier than a pig, and what. But I think this is a good player for them. And Javon Holland was my safety too. And I actually thought there was a chance that Packers would go safety early instead of cornerback.
Yeah, I did too. I thought that they may value that versatility, finding somebody to move Darnell Savage around and play that star role, if you will. And Packers owner, number 94482, you might know him a little bit better as Mr. Bart Winkler, has joined the show. Bart Winkler of 1250 AM. Bart, welcome. How are you feeling?
Terrible. I don't know. This has obviously been very weird. And my main thought on it is that it's been, the Favre thing was a disaster. The Favre thing was a disaster for years. And it was, will he or won't he? And, all this hemming and hawing. And it got to be so annoying. Well, now we did all of that we did 5 years and 5 hours yesterday. And now, I don't know, it seems like Rodgers never – I mean, where did this the other day, he's hosting Jeopardy, and we're like, this is fun. And then, by the way, he hates playing for the Packers. He will never return. So it all seems to have escalated very quickly. But Green Bay, they make their pick last night, and they're just going to keep going on business as normal. It's I don't know, man. This is pretty messed up.
It sure felt that way. I like the point you made of 5 years and 5 hours. So my question I have for you is, back in 2008, Twitter existed, but not really.
No.
So how much do you think that Favre saga would have played out in a faster fashion if social media was what it is now?
Yeah, probably faster. I mean, would Rodgers have sat for 3 years behind Favre in that case? I remember, was it the last year? What was the year that Rodgers came into the Cowboys game? They lost.
That was Favre's last year in Green Bay.
Yeah, so last year. Because I was watching that game at a friend's house, and I called my brother after, and we were ecstatic about the loss because we knew we were going to be in good hands. Rodgers looked so good. But that was the extent of it. Like, that's the one person I talked to. I didn't go online and share my thoughts. So we didn't have all of these platforms to do that. Things are too fast these days. I don't want to accidentally get on my rant about how social media is the worst invention of all.
Yeah,
it's terrible. But yeah, it sped up, I think, a lot quicker. I mean, what if you weren't online yesterday or in front of a TV? Like, what if you were busy at work? You had a very busy day. And it's 11 o'clock and, you go to your job and then you come home and you turn it on at 7 o'clock. They didn't really the draft started. All the Rodgers stuff died at 7. And then at 10:30 or whenever the Packers picked, they're like, oh, and by the way, here's what happens today. Rodgers wants out, and all this stuff goes down in such a tight window, but it felt like forever. It's just, I think that's a good point. The Favre stuff would have escalated much quicker. By the time then that he was coming back, then there was more social media, because then we were tracking his flight plan. You remember all that kind of stuff.
All that shit was weird.
But yeah, I have a TV guide in my basement. I tweet out every now and then. It's a TV guide. It's from 2003, and on the cover is Brett Favre, and it says "One Last Hurrah." It's 2003, so that stuff was going on forever, but it was so much slower back then. And now I hate it. I hate this. I pretty much hate this whole thing. I like Eric Stokes, but that's about it.
So let's get to that here in just a second. I will say, I remember it's just crazy to me. I've often said that if social media existed during Favre's career, Favre wouldn't have made it in Green Bay. They would have had him benched, traded, whatever.
Yeah.
Or there would have been, some of the whispers that you hear about his partying and all that stuff. That would have been a much bigger deal than it was.
The whole Vicodin thing would have been a whole. Big...
absolutely. Absolutely. Andrew Mertig has joined us as well, one of the draft experts of Game On Wisconsin. Andrew, first of all, thank you for joining us. I'm happy to see someone else has the hairline that I do. I just cover it up by wearing a baseball cap.
So I'm getting there, boys.
There we go.
Am I the only one that's rocking a full helmet here?
Shut up, Ryan.
All I've gathered, that means Ryan is the most handsome person in this stream, which is about par for the course.
That's not good news. That's not good news, guys. For any of us.
Whatever. That is what it is at this point. But Andrew, we talked about Eric Stokes. Bart said he likes the pick. I think a lot of people have gathered, that I think after the dust settled about the whole, oh my God, another defensive player, not a receiver. Then it was like, oh, wait a minute. They needed a cornerback. Kevin King may or may not be good. This dude might have been the best one on the board. So just tell me your thoughts in general about, I know you do plenty of your own homework, obviously, but your thoughts on Eric Stokes.
Yeah, I'm lower on Stokes than a lot of people, and I was lower on JC Horn than a lot of people, and there's a lot of similarities there, right? Like I didn't love the tightness in his hips, but when you understand at least what we perceive the Packers defensive scheme is going to be this year, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like you're not going to ask Eric Stokes to play the same coverage you have Jair Alexander in. You're going to ask him to spend a lot of time either in bump and run or with his back to the sideline, and that like long frame, the crazy linear speed, all of those things are going to be really good assets. He has nice ball skills. He's not afraid to tackle. I totally understand it. Not incredibly high on the pick. I think there were a few players that I would have liked to see, but the way the board fell, absolutely understand. And, we're all still a little hurt from Kevin King's performance in the NFC Championship game.
Okay, we don't need to bring that part up. So, Bart, you mentioned you like Eric. You mentioned you did like the pick. We don't have to talk about Kevin King in an NFC Championship game ever again. But, Bart, you said you liked the pick. That is we'll call it a 180 from last year. I don't know if you've been vocal at all about your displeasure.
180, 540. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, well, it was a pick of a position of need. We need a corner. And as I was pacing around the living room last night, trying to figure out with a couple of picks to go, you think of some guys that you like, and then obviously, they go right away. And like right before, like Rashad Bateman. Okay, so Baltimore takes him, and you're thinking, well, if the Packers need a receiver and they need to, placate Rodgers, is this what they do? But they needed cornerback coming in. I've been locked on cornerback for a while with what I wanted to see. Now they could have taken a myriad of positions. I would have been fine. Quarterback obviously would have been stupid. Running back probably wouldn't have been smart. But really, any position they would have taken, there are needs both short term and long term, so you can build for the future. But also, Stokes should be playing consistently, getting a good chunk of snaps here right away. I was watching NFL Network earlier today, and Steve Smith was talking about how Kevin King is so bad. He is itching to get – he almost thought about coming out of retirement to play against Kevin King. So Steve Smith said that today. That's fantastic. But they needed
like 180 years old.
I know, but they needed a corner. Now, with what I saw from the corners, and maybe this is where Andrew's research came in too, is you looked at it looked like there were 4 corners that were maybe first round grade, and Stokes would have been like mid-second round. So I didn't want the Packers to trade back for any circumstance. So if you're there at 29, get your guy at 29. You know, would you have gone with, you know, I think a lot of people like Asante Samuel, but they got their guy. They got the guy that they like. I mean, obviously he's fast. He's a good size for them. So is the value there? You know, probably not, but you never know how these things are going to shake out. So if you wanted a corner and he was your guy, I'm satisfied they got a corner. I would have rather the Packers traded up and got Greg Newsome or traded up and got somebody else. But for where they're at 29, to get this guy, and you know, he's not a 10 out of 10. He went 29. He didn't go top 10. But I think that it was a position of need, and it's to me, he seems to be a better, like, oh, this guy will come in and play corner and play in our secondary, and it seems more of a sure thing than maybe the Rollins and the Randalls of years past. So I do like it. I do like it, and it will be interesting to see what they do here tonight.
At minimum, at least football is Stokes' primary position. Andrew, I did cut you off, and I didn't mean to actually do that. It just kind of happened. But I'm rude, so we'll just kind of go with what it is.
How dare you?
Yeah, I can see you're super offended by it too. So I'm sorry. I will send you some chocolates in the mail or something. I don't know, whatever you like. But you said that Stokes wasn't who you would have picked. So when they were on the board, where were you looking? What would you have done if you were Brian Gutekunst?
Yeah, I was really a big advocate for Liam Eichenberg, really shoring up that right tackle position, and also giving you some leeway that if Bakhtiari is not ready at the beginning of the season, I think Eichenberg could probably sub there for a little bit, and then you just plug and play him, for the next 10 years at right tackle. I got the Elijah Moore buzz as well. I thought he was a really fun weapon if they wanted to go that way, but I totally understand corner. That's fine. But my goal tonight, Jacob, is just to make you as upset as possible and get cut off every single time. So the reason why I was a little bit late in jumping on was I was trying to delay getting on until after the whole Morig thing had passed. So sorry.
Like I said, my heart is broken and I'm not taking questions. And now the talk of Asante Samuel can die. The Los Angeles Chargers have just selected him. And I'm telling you, that team has a defense, or at least a secondary, that if they're healthy could be very, very good. So let's kick back. Ryan, we talked a little bit about what they were looking at doing tonight. As this has progressed a little bit, what are you thinking now? As we've seen a little run on offensive tackles. We've seen obviously Asante Samuel just went off the board. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I still think there's some big-time players on the defensive line available in the second round. What pick are we at here? Almost at pick 50?
It's 48 right now. No, since we know Asante Samuel went 47th.
Right. So I mean, the board is really falling pretty well in the Packers' favor. If they're looking at wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive line, I think there's still a lot of good options there. I think as we kind of get this far down and closer to their pick, it's probably less likely that we're going to see a trade up there. I think with the board and talent I see on there right now, I'd be perfectly comfortable standing pat and seeing what falls to me at 62, and then maybe trying to make some trades in the third round to go up and get some guys that still have some, solid contributor grades on them. So I'm still looking hard at, Rondale Moore, or Amari Rogers. Those are two guys that I think immediately from an offensive perspective can actually make an impact in a way that your typical Packers wide receiver that you would draft and develop to play on the outside wouldn't actually make an immediate impact. A Terrence Marshall or another outside wide receiver. I think you'd actually, behind Alan Lazard, behind MVS, those guys are pretty supplanted in this offense, the number one offense from last year. But there was a distinct kind of gadget role player available for the Packers that I think, they tried running MVS on those jet sweeps. They tried Tyler Ervin, who can't stay healthy. They need somebody that can impact special teams right off the bat as well. So I really like both of those guys to be able to contribute both on offense and special teams right away. So I know I've been clamoring for that guy for a while, but He's sitting there, and he is arguably the most explosive player in this entire draft. So you add explosive talent on the defensive side with Eric Stokes. You add explosive talent with Rondale Moore. And again, I know he doesn't meet the thresholds, but late second round pick, I don't really care at that point. Get him in there. He can help this team.
Bart, let's talk a little bit about that. Do you think the Packers, we're talking about those thresholds, is that something that you think maybe they should be more willing to deviate from? You know, sometimes the thought process is it feels like they miss out on some good players because of these, I don't want to call them mythical, but these hardline thresholds that they have that, okay, so they're not going to draft Asante Samuel can be an example as somebody like that. But is that something that you think they should be looking at? You know, Ryan just mentioned a couple guys, Moore, Rodgers, Dwayne Eskridge is a guy like that. There's a lot of receivers that don't really fit their type, if you will. Should they alter that type?
Well, I mean, you know, if you have a type, you have a type. But, you know, I think I'm trying to be careful how I say this. So I'm not gonna.
I think it boils down to the player, right? Like Jair Alexander didn't meet their 10 goes in line.
Sometimes you like just forget it. It was about whatever. I like the receivers that you mentioned. I like that. You know, you look at this pick here coming up, and you know the Rodgers thing. If they take Amari Rodgers, okay, that's ripe for jokes. But I would love a guy like that. And they have to start looking at wide receiver now too, not just as like, oh well, we want another weapon for Rodgers, but they need another receiver. If you're going to look long term, you need a wide receiver as much as you need a lot of these other positions. Devontae Adams was never – I started talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and I say that because I want credit if it gets more mainstream. But I started talking about a couple of weeks ago that you can't assume Devontae's staying. You can't assume that he's going to sign another deal. You think he's going to, but with all this going on with Rodgers, maybe he wants to play with Rodgers. Maybe he wants to go, you know, try to play somewhere else and, you know, prove that he can do it somewhere else. You never know. So until he's locked up, I'm not super comfortable that he's going to be. I think he will, but you never know. So I think receiver is somebody you got to look at that can impact you now, make Rodgers, you know, feel better for a day, you know, get over this early midlife crisis or whatever the hell he's doing. Get somebody that you like, come back here. He's coming. We all know he's coming back, dude. He's pouting. That's what I think. So get him somebody that he likes, but also you're killing two birds with one stone because it's also a guy that you need now and for the future. And then maybe, you know, offensive line I'd like to see too. But yeah, I mean, Jair, get the best guy. If you have a certain type of guy you like and he's not there, don't reach down to get that guy. Get the guy that is there that is good. Just saw the comment there. That's I'm not gonna laugh because it's probably true. It's depressing. So that's what I want to see. Yeah, either a wide receiver or maybe offensive line coming up.
So that looks to be the case. He's Bart Winkler. You can catch him 12:50 a.m. The Fan. You can follow him on Twitter at WinksThinks. Bart, final thoughts? Anything we got coming up in the can here? Or you're not on again until Monday, right?
Yeah, I'm on again Monday. I'm gonna hit the booze pretty heavy tonight. I got my Leap Spirit with my boy Leroy. I'm not liking what's going on in the rest of the division. The Vikings, they're being smart. The Lions are just getting guys that fall to them, and the Bears, you know, their GM and coach have nothing to lose. They don't care about the next regime. They're trying to save their jobs, and in the process, they're trading up and getting guys. Like, I think Justin Fields is going to be very good.
I do too.
I am in on Justin Fields, so we'll see what happens. I know Ohio State history. You got the Ohio State quarterback history with the Bears quarterback history. It's like a recipe for disaster. But I look at what the Bears are doing, and it's hard not to be envious of the rest of the North right now. The Packers went to 2 NFC Championship games 2 years in a row, won 26 games, and we're in a rebuild somehow. Well, this is fantastic.
Well, they'll see if that is in fact the case. Obviously, a lot to be decided between now and then. I can tell you this, Bart. This makes your job easy for the next 4 or 5 months or so. It's very much
dude,
like
when we were in a pandemic last year, they drafted Jordan Love. We had nothing else to talk about. That might have saved sports radio. And I only say that like 10% joking.
Well, hey, enough of a joke as it was, but we appreciate you stopping by, Bart. Thank you as always for
How long are you
giving
guys
us some
streaming?
time.
If I'm hammered, I might come back on. Like,
Oh God. Yeah, we'll be here for a little while. You'll be able to see if we're here or not. So
all right,
we appreciate you stopping by. Thanks, Bart. Appreciate it. We'll see you again. Okay.
thanks, guys.
Bart Winkler again, 12:50 a.m. So Andrew, you feel like you're chomping at the bit here. What are some thoughts going through your head as this draft has progressed? Aaron Banks, pick number 48 to the San Francisco 49ers, who, by the way, that's what I want to talk about with you guys. First of all, the quarterbacks. It's a sexy discussion, and the Packers haven't really had to, quote unquote, do it. They did last year with Jordan Love. But to me, the way I rank the quarterbacks this year was Lawrence 1, Justin Fields 2. And that's the part why I'm as upset as I am, is the Bears, to me, got the second best quarterback in this draft. Trey Lance 3, and Zach Wilson 4, with Mac Jones a distant 5th to that. But Andrew, how were your quarterbacks graded out, and how do you think they found as far as the situations they found here?
Yeah, so I had Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall, obviously, and I think that's going to be really interesting because I have no idea. Urban Meyer typically didn't develop quarterbacks super well, at least not for pro style offenses, while he was a college head coach. I think you could maybe argue on a couple points, but largely not. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that offense looks, how college focused it is. I mean, you go back to Steve Spurrier, and that experiment didn't work. And there are plenty of examples of really good college head coaches who just couldn't cut it in the NFL. So, is Trevor Lawrence the exception? Is he able to overcome that? We know that situation is going to be so crucial to any quarterback. That often is as much to do with their success as their individual talent and work ethic. I had Justin Fields as my number 2 quarterback. Had him at 4 overall. I thought the Bears got an absolute steal because what's the worst case, right? He turns into what Jalen Hurts was for the Eagles, and he's a spark plug. And with that defense and the surrounding talent, that's probably good enough to push the Bears into a little bit more of a playoff run, right? Like they're a playoff team with garbage quarterbacking. Even just a little bit of upgrade from there is a big deal. And oh, by the way, there's enough teams in the NFC, Green Bay included, that have historically struggled with scrambling quarterbacks to go there. And then, his ceiling is really high. I think he could be a, top 10 quarterback in the league if he reaches his potential. I actually had Trey Lance as my quarterback 3. I'm really interested to see what San Francisco does. I don't know if they're going to customize what they do a little bit more, but like what a phenomenal situation for a rookie quarterback to find themselves falling into a incredible defense, all the weapons you could ask for, a really stout offensive line. That was awesome. And then I had Zach Wilson as my QB4. I really hope the Jets do a good job of protecting him. My main concern with Wilson, besides the fact that he was really kind of a one-year wonder, is the shoulder injury history combined with what I saw was kind of a weird throwing motion that puts a lot of stress on that same joint. And I really hope he can stay healthy. He's not the thickest frame either. And so, that's my main concern.
Speaking of the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields, a little bit of insight we could bring on this from Channel 13 WREX in Rockford, Illinois, the 49th, give or take years, president of the United States, Mr. William Ingalls, Will, formerly of Bears Goggles On and Windy City Sports and a bunch of different Bear stuff. Welcome to the show, Will.
Thank you. It's friendly at the moment. I'm happy that that's the case. But so far, I think there are some positive things to talk about the Bears draft on our end, which isn't what I expected going in. But thanks for having me on. It's good to see all of you.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted you to jump in a little bit. I just made the comment, oh my gosh, Arizona just took Rondell Moore, and that's going to be fantastic in Kingsbury's offense with Kyler Murray. But the Bears, I made the comment earlier that they are having maybe my favorite draft so far, and I hate it. But let's go back through it about Justin Fields. That's the big storyline. They move up to 11. They're able to get him there. They give up a first-round pick for next year, which, again, my thought on that is if he's good, who cares? Nobody else will, because he'll be a starter in Chicago for a decade or longer and might be the greatest quarterback in the history of the Bears. But what are your thoughts on Justin Fields as he transitions from Ohio State into Chicago?
Right. It's actually almost a really strange. And Jake, I know we did a little bit of Bears coverage back in 2017 when this was kind of the Trubisky setup. There is a lot of weird parallels with how this quarterback room looks like as far as this transition is concerned. You know, Andy Dalton is playing the much smaller necked version of Mike Glennon. You have Nick Foles, who's kind of that player coach like Mark Sanchez was. And then obviously you have the young up and comer and Justin Fields that's coming in. You know, it's a situation where he can wait a few games. I'm not sure if Pace will be able to survive that wait as a general manager, and you know, potentially even Matt Nagy as well as a head coach. You would expect that perhaps Matt Nagy had a little bit of say as to drafting Fields and the movement for Fields is how we wanted him as his guy. But you're talking about a situation. You have a great, you know, receiver in Allen Robinson. You have some up and coming developing pieces. A lot of people forget Tariq Cohen's a really good weapon. He'll be coming back. And that at least seems like a decent possession. You know, he's not going to be burdening anybody like a Travis Kelce or George Kittle, but you have some developing and promising pieces. Darnell Mooney, have to mention him as well. So, you know, as far as adapting him to the offense, you know, Matt Nagy obviously has a few tricks to get a quarterback to look competent, i.e. Mitch Trubisky. But you know, we'll see kind of how long it takes. That's really the question. And it's the same question we had when Trubisky was drafted in 2017, is that it's not if, it's when. And that when is still kind of up in the air. And we'll kind of see that throughout preseason and whether Andy Dalton can still play competent quarterback play, you know, throughout the beginning of the season.
And that's where my question lies. You mentioned people not being able to survive. One of the things, and there were quite a few things that went wrong during Mitchell Trubisky's career in Chicago, some of them his fault, others not. My question is, what's your concern level of Chicago doesn't have a good season next year? They fire Pace, they fire Nagy, and then the same exact thing that happened to Trubisky basically happens from the standpoint of he's got a second coach. Now, granted, going from John Fox and that archaic system to Matt Nagy was a massive upgrade, but learning that second system in 2 years, that's a tough spot for a quarterback. And that is at least some sort of a possibility in a division that right now certainly has some uncertainty to it. But is there any concern level about how the Bears might be able to function if that's something they have to do, and specifically with Fields?
Talking to a Bears fan about concern in a quarterback in the same sentence is kind of a lifestyle.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah, I'd have to agree to a lot of those points. Yeah, you're concerned about, you know, him picking up multiple systems in 2 years. And we saw that it was really Trubisky's undoing, is that the more he had to think clearly, the more he kind of shrank in the level of play. You know, you saw it, especially as the season got longer, the games got bigger, you know, when things came off those early game progressions, he was really struggling. And you have to wonder if Fields is going to be able to, you know, see the field and go through those progressions a lot more efficiently. Obviously, that's not something you can judge at the NFL level until you see him actually play, which, I mean, that's the best and worst part about these, you know, immediate draft reactions, is that you're really excited about the potential, but as far as actual evidence and things that you can say for sure, it's really tough to say as to whether or not, you know, that double coach system would be a problem. I mean, yeah, I'd say I'm concerned just because it's kind of hard to project what candidates would be out there. And that was really the thing when a lot of Chicago fans were upset, myself included, about Ryan Pace still being in the building and having another crack at this whole quarterback thing, which we thought for sure he was going to screw up until last night as the pick was getting announced, because there just wasn't a whole lot of candidates. Like, if you fire Ryan Pace, who was the guy that was going to want to come to a quarterback, you know, depraved system, a lot of aging vets, not a lot of cap space, you know, you have to wonder what those candidates look like. Now, at the very least, you know, you again have, at the very least, I know a lot of people had Fields as the number 2 quarterback in the draft, myself included. You have, again, that blue chip prospect, which at the very least should hopefully do something to help attract those candidates should, you know, both Pace and Nagy or one or the other get fired.
Somebody was talking last night to me about this, as this could potentially be a pivot point in the franchise. Obviously, you've got the drama surrounding the quarterback situation in Green Bay. And then the Bears get, who in my opinion was the second best quarterback. Andrew, I think you just said that a few minutes ago as well. Second best quarterback in this draft class. What is your optimism level that the reign of terror on your end, or my joy, is over?
I mean, when it comes to, you know, Aaron Rodgers, yeah, I'll believe he moves on from, you know, destroying 2 weeks of every season, you know, when it happens, and potentially 3 when I am so blessed that it happens. Thankfully, it's only happened once, or not thankfully, because that means we're never going to the playoffs, which is kind of been the case. But there is definitely optimism that Fields can finally be the guy. I mean, the fact that Pace was able to move up and get one of those guys, I think that the feeling in Chicago would be dramatically different if this was Mac Jones. That's obviously, you can't say that for sure, but I feel like Fields just has that athletic ceiling that Mac Jones does not have. There's a feeling of like star potential that Fields has that I really think has a large feeling of optimism. Now, whether or not he's going to have to fight through stiff competition, almost looking like, I believe, the AFC West. I'm horrible with Cardinal directions, but it's looking like that could be a murderer's row of quarterbacks, within the near future. Who's to say if that's what Fields will have to fight through? But at the very least, I think at this point, if Chicago can bank on someone throwing for 250 yards a game and not need garbage time to get there, I think that that optimism is a really good way to put that, is something that they'd be thrilled about.
I can just tell you that if 12 is back and Fields is in, I'm looking forward to at least seeing what the Bears might look like with someone that's competent at the position. He's Will
Ingalls. Two of us.
That's fair. You can catch Will Ingalls on Twitter at Will Ingalls, and you guys might remember him. Never mind, I can't make that joke anymore because you donated money to Jamal Williams' charity. So I can't make that joke. That'll forever remain a mystery. Will, I know you're working. I appreciate you stopping by and chatting some Chicago Bears with us tonight.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate the fact that you gave us a little snippet in your Packers Space broadcast. But anyways, like you said, hopefully we have a lot more fun games to watch instead of us trying to keep you guys, under 20 points, that the game can remain competitive. So hopefully we have some more enjoyable matchups instead of just the domination that's been, the Green Bay Packers for the last decade.
22 decades, but there you go. That's Will Ingalls. Appreciate you for
counting. Goodbye.
I am. There you go. That's a perfect way to go off. That's Will Ingalls. He of Channel 13 WREX here in Rockford, Illinois, chatting about the Chicago Bears. Guys, that's enough talk about crappy teams. Let's talk about a good team. Pick number 51, Azeez Ojulari, just went 50 to the New York Giants. The Washington football team is now on the clock, and who they're going to select right now remains a bit of a mystery. I don't see anything on the old tweet machine just yet.
I just want to go back to that crappy team really quick. That the Tevin Jenkins trade up is I thought a really masterful move by Chicago. But your son Rashawn Gary versus Tevin Jenkins twice a year, that is, I have a feeling you're gonna be able to feel the earth vibrate outside of Lambeau during 100%. Those games. That like just from like somebody who loves good football, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Green Bay's got quite a few things that are gonna be a bit of a problem now that Chicago presents, and obviously that defense is always a challenge. And if Justin Fields is good, now they've got that offense to potentially go with it, and some, like Will mentioned, some weapons around it. So, Ryan, let's go around the North right now. Samuel Cosmi, the pick to the Washington football team, which has me breathing a sigh of relief for the reasons we talked about earlier. But let's go around the North a little bit. What are your thoughts right now if Green Bay, and if the season were to start tomorrow, let's assume that Aaron Rodgers is under center, which is what we're going to do moving forward. But if Aaron Rodgers is under center, which team worries you the most at this point? Ryan, you're muted, so please unmute yourself.
Yeah, that might help, eh? Perfect.
There we go.
Jeez,
he
Louis.
said, hey.
Hey, come on. I'm from Canada. It's just part of the brand. So I think it's the Chicago Bears. I know here in Manitoba, Canada, there's a lot of Vikings fans around here, and they like to think that they're the challengers to the throne. But Chicago was the second best team in the division last year, and I don't think it was very close. Again, their awful quarterback play really showed its hand towards the end of the year, and I think you guys nailed it. Justin Fields was the second best quarterback in this draft. Like I was kind of blown away that he didn't go number 2. I was convinced, I had money on it that he was going to go number 2. So that's how confident I was that he was the number 2 guy out there. So I think that's an amazing pick. I think the Tevin Jenkins pick is amazing. And that's a loaded defense already that has good weapons on offense. I mean, they have David Montgomery, say what you will. He's a good running back. They got perfect complement to him and Tariq Cohen. And then you've got Allen Robinson, who may or may not want to be there. I don't know, but he's under contract or franchise tag for the year.
I think he does now. I think his thing is, do I want to play with?
Probably feeling a little bit better than he was, a couple months ago. So I think they have a roster that's ready to put a guy like Justin Fields in and can produce right away. So, the Vikings are going to be probably a similar team, I think, that they were last year. Maybe a little bit better, but kind of floating around in that 8-8, 9-7. I think they're going to have a tough time playing against the Bears and the Packers within the division. So, for me, it's the Chicago Bears that are the biggest challenge for us going forward.
Andrew?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Bears have the most complete roster outside of Green Bay. When you look at the NFC North, I almost just said NFC Central. I don't know where that was floating around the back of my brain.
All I got out of that is you're old.
Very true. So I think, so are we going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers too in the NFC Central?
No,
I think they're a pretty big challenger for the Packers, but no, that doesn't work.
There's probably a lot of young fans that don't even realize that Tampa Bay used to be in the same division, but I think Chicago, that makes all the sense in the world. They still, they lost Fuller, right? So their secondary was already a little bit of an issue. So if there's a crack in the armor there on the defense, I think that's something that you can exploit. The Bears don't have another pick until I think the 5th round. So you're probably not going to get immediate starters there. They're going to be anticipating some pretty big jumps from some young players and maybe Eddie Jackson finally doing Eddie Jackson things that he was able to do when he had Adrian Amos carrying him. I do think the Vikings are probably a challenger. They got better on the offensive line last night. They have a bunch more picks coming. Their secondary, though, another team in the NFC North with the secondary as a liability. I don't know what's going on with Jeff Gladney. I don't want to pretend to know. But that was like the one sort of bright spot that they had at corner last year, and he's probably not there this year. So they got a lot of room to make up there. I think Detroit's going to be kind of competitive. They'll Detroit things around and they're rebuilding, but I think they'll play hard and they'll be a thorn in the side of a few teams this season.
Yeah, Jared Goff is good enough, right? He's not as bad as Twitter tells you he is. He did get the Rams to a Super Bowl, or help get the Rams to a Super Bowl, I should say. And I've got all the respect in the world for Jared Goff, man. That dude played in a playoff game. He helped beat Seattle with a broken thumb, played at Lambeau with a broken thumb. There's just the tough guy levels. He definitely did what he needed to do there. Minnesota is a team that, they're probably Minnesota and Chicago to me, if everything stays the same, are the same team. They've got 9 to 11 wins, something like that. If everything breaks the right way and lose in the first round of the playoffs kind of thing. Chicago, if Fields develops and becomes, a franchise quarterback with that defense still relatively in its prime, all that good stuff, then they have a chance to be a Super Bowl contender. And speaking of contenders, we now have a contender in here for the smelliest person of Game On Wisconsin, Zach Jacobson of Packer Reports and Open Book here at Game On Wisconsin. Zach, welcome to the show.
What is up, man? Thank you for having me in the rotation of guests we've had today. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. It's been going well. We've had some pretty good conversations here. The Cleveland Browns just selected Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at 52 overall as they traded up. That one's interesting to me because it's a guy that a lot of people thought was going to go in the top 20. Green Bay obviously had a chance to draft him and did not. And nobody did for the first 51 picks. And there's always one or two guys that fall that, Twitter, if you will, thinks is going to be great. And Tevin Jenkins is a guy like that. I think he fell a little bit. And then JOK here as we do those kinds of things. So Zach, what are your thoughts on how this draft has played out so far? And specifically now, were you a fan of JOK if he were to fall into Green Bay's range?
Yeah, we talked about him very briefly on Open Book on Thursday. He reminded me, not exactly like, the composition of his body or anything like that, but the way he played, like he can play that kind of hybrid linebacker safety role. He reminded me like a lot of Deion Buchanan. And I thought for someone like Joe Barry, like that would be a huge piece to his defense, because at least Mike Pettin did. He loved those hybrid safeties that can come down into the box and really do all kinds of different things. This guy, he can do that. So I thought that would have been a really interesting pick, especially considering he fell into their vicinity. Like you said, it was a really surprising kind of fall. He was projected as a first-round pick. I thought the Packers were gonna have to trade up maybe into like the early 20s, maybe mid 20s, right around there, if they wanted someone like that. But overall, I mean, the board fell perfectly for the Packers in the first round. I mean, they had their choice of a bunch of different guys. They obviously went with Eric Stokes, and up until recently, it was falling their way again. And that was until Asante Samuel Jr. went off the board and Rondale Moore went off the board. So my heart was broken twice consecutively. So I'm in, yeah, exactly, Ryan. So I'm in a lot of pain right now, but obviously being
Guys,
with
I'm
you,
trying to help you. I tried to help you during it. Rondale Moore was never going to be a Green Bay Packer. I mean,
I know. It was such a pipe dream. It's so unrealistic, but I had a sliver of hope. A man can
I get
dream.
it. Yeah, no, I get it.
I'm almost thankful that they drafted him and he wasn't there for the Packers to pass on him, because then I would be more upset. At least now it's out of our control. That's the way I'm going to look at it.
Exactly. Like if he was sitting there at 62 and like I have my fingers crossed, like this crazy miraculous dream is coming true, then my heart would be shattered into a million pieces, more so than it is right now.
Exactly.
Well, the other question I have then is one of your guys was obviously Asante Samuel Jr., and he started to fall a little bit, and we were starting to wonder if that were the case. So let's talk about that. Was there any hope on that side of things that you thought maybe they would get ASJ to add and double down at cornerback?
I actually tweeted that a little bit ago. I thought, considering he fell into like the mid 20s, he was kind of slipping into the back end there. I thought maybe they would kind of pull what they did in 2015, like they did with Demarius Randall, Quentin Rollins. They would kind of double down there and start maybe remaking their secondary from scratch. I mean, Kevin King obviously isn't a long-term solution. He's on a one-year deal. Shannon Sullivan obviously isn't a long-term solution. He's probably not even going to be their starting slot corner next year, depending on what they do with Eric Stokes and Jair. But I mean, that would have been at least the perfect opportunity to kind of incentivize that remake right there, that whole little rebuild in the secondary. I mean, if you get oh my God, guys would have full-on breakdowns on the field. Literally, if quarterbacks had to go up against a secondary with Darnell Savage, Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, and Asante Samuel Jr., oh my God, that would be disgusting.
Yeah, and I think that, what'd you say? I think you said a grown man would cry on the field if that were the case. So that whole thing would have been interesting to me. Obviously, he's a Charger, and now that somebody's really loud, but
that was
something. Dylan Radin's now the pick to North Dakota State, so the tackles are flying off the board for the Packers. Dylan Radin's to me is somebody they could have drafted, and I thought he could have started at center. He's never repped there in a game, but he has repped there in practice. So we're at pick number 54 here. The Indianapolis Colts are on the clock. The Packers just 8 picks away. Zach, we've had a couple people here talk about a few different things they plan on tonight. What are your thoughts on tonight as this night progresses? What they should be doing?
Well, they should just trade away the third-round pick because they have not had any success in the third round at all over the years. So, and we know Brian Gutekunst, he was going to come into this supposedly very aggressive with his with the 10 picks he had in his back pocket. So he was going to want to move around the board. So far, that's not happening. I mean, there's still 8 more picks plays on the clock. So that third round pick, I don't want to call it useless, but it's capital that they can use, or at least they could have used to move up and navigate this second round and grab someone that can help their team immediately. I know their eyes are just fixated on the future, and they have this fetish for the future. They want to do everything they can to supplement the future. It's ridiculous, and they don't really keep the present in perspective. So
you've been spending too much time with Eli. Go on.
Why is that?
Because that sounds like something that would come directly out of his mouth. But go on.
Well, I mean, I understand. I understand the optics. You always have to keep the long term in perspective, but at the same time, there's no reason why you can't do both. Like you can't grab a guy like Asante Samuel Jr., have him kind of really just learn the system for a year, and then you roll Jair, Kevin King, Shannon Sullivan out in 2021. I mean, that's a fine trio right there. So, yeah, for the rest of this night, I mean, just get rid of that third round pick. Find a way to trade up, trade it for some future assets, trade it for a player. I don't know, but just do something with it. because I'm not a fan of that pick at all. That area, and plus we know the draft too. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. We know the draft kind of falls off in talent this year. Outside of maybe like the first couple rounds, it's not a very good group this year.
Yeah, and it's not as deep because, like we've mentioned before, there's fewer players than typical, and then there's less information available than there has been before because of the medical stuff and everything like that. One name is somebody's falling, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to jinx it. Me personally, I don't really care, but Terrace Marshall, the wide receiver out of LSU, and Andrew, that seems to be the favorite right now amongst Twitter for Green Bay to pick. Me personally, with the way this board is falling, the guy I would pick right now at 62, I'm not going to say his name. I will just tell you he's a wide receiver, and we've talked about him on the Gold Zone quite a bit. So I'll just leave it at that in interest of keeping him on the board for the next 7 or 8 picks. So, Andrew, my question to you is, Marshall, where did you have him rated on your board, and what are your thoughts on him at just the player portion as a Packer?
Are you ready to mute me permanently? Maybe even kick me off the stream. I had Terrace Marshall Jr. as my 13th overall player in this class.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now there's some health question marks here, and I would anticipate that's part of the reason why he's slipping a little bit. He's 20 years old, right? We know the Packers love those young guys. He was really, really good at LSU. I like the athleticism. To me, he would be a slam dunk pick in the second round. But there's a whole bunch of receivers that I also think hold good value. I'm not going to mention the names because I don't want to accidentally say your guy and then be blamed for that for the rest of eternity. But I feel pretty safely in saying Amon-Ra St. Brown's probably not it. So. But there's a bunch of people that are in that zone that I think would all be really good picks. There's some interesting names that have slid, on my board. If you're looking tackle, I know Jalen Mayfield, like his pro day was a disaster, but really good on tape. You have, if you like interior offensive line, Creed Humphrey, Wyatt Davis, Trey Smith, all those guys are really good. There's that sort of second tier of defensive linemen that's still hanging out there. Some fun linebackers, Jabril Cox, Baron Browning. I don't want to mention corner because I feel like if they take a corner now that I won't be able to log on to Twitter for the next month and a half. But
let's just stop there real quick. And that's the second time I've cut you off, but you promised I would.
That's fine.
Is that if they don't take a receiver, Twitter's going to burn anyways. And that's true regardless of the round. So frankly, they could have drafted J.C. Horn last night, Patrick Surtain, name your top corner, whatever. And somebody would have been pissed off if they didn't draft Rondale Moore or another weapon for the quarterback.
100%.
So, Andrew, as far as that goes, if you don't want to watch people complain incessantly all night long, just never log into Twitter.
Well, and that's why I'm not super active all the time and why I don't respond to a lot of comments. Just I don't know. I can't deal with all of the negativity. Like I want to see what these players turn into. But yeah, I think Terrace Marshall is really interesting. Funny story. I thought his name was Terrence up until a month ago when somebody pointed it out to me. So, I've been watching this guy for a year and a half, getting his name wrong the entire time.
It's funny you say that because every time I see his name, I always think of Terrence Murphy, the guy that Packers drafted in the second round 5.
He would have been a Hall of Famer.
He would have, and they probably never would have drafted Greg Jennings,
the third best receiver that Aaron Rodgers has ever played with. That's true.
Second, but we don't
need to get into that debate. And frankly,
we slip up all the time. I get it.
It's kind of like the Rodgers and Favre debate. The good news is we don't have to pick. We saw all of them play, and both of those guys won a Super Bowl. So they just need to get a ring on Devontae Adams' finger, and we can really solidify that one as well. So let's talk about this, guys. Andrew, you mentioned some interior offensive linemen. Ryan, it's been a minute since I've heard your sultry accent, so I need to have this here. But looking at this offensive line, do you think the Packers need to address the interior of the offensive line or the exterior of the offensive line? Listening to Gutekunst talk the other day, he sounded pretty optimistic. They didn't need, quote unquote, to take an offensive tackle if they didn't want to.
I don't disagree with him. Like, tackle is a need, but if you can get Creed Humphrey at 62 and plug him in as your starting center, like that flexibility allows with Elton Jenkins being able to slide out to left tackle. You've got Billy Turner that can play guard tackle. You've got John Runyon. You've got Lucas Patrick. So, like, I think if they want to just plug Creed Humphrey in there as a replacement for Corey Linsley. Now, I'm not saying Creed Humphrey is going to be as good as Corey Linsley, but he's a starting caliber center. Plug him in there. You put Lucas Patrick at left guard. You put John Runyon at right guard. You got Billy Turner at right tackle. And Eldon Jenkins at left tackle to start the season until Bakhtiari comes back. And then Lucas Patrick and John Runyon get to battle it out for the right guard position. So I think it's about getting the best player on the offensive line if that's the way that they're going. If there's a tackle there that they have rated higher, by all means, go and do that. But I don't. If they've got Creed Humphrey rated higher than the next highest rated tackle, I don't think they're pegged into having to go on the outside there. Not at all.
Yeah, and one of my thoughts is looking at it was one of the reasons if I thought about it was my attraction for Tevin Jenkins and Alex Leatherwood and Brady Christensen and players like that is if they fail at tackle, I think those guys are 5 to 8 year starters at guard as well. Any of those guys that I just mentioned. Brady Christensen might need to add a little bit more lead in his pants, but other than that, I think that's about it. So to me, it's Pat Freiermuth is the tight end selection. So the second tight end off the board after Kyle Pitts, my tight end 4 for the Cheesehead TV draft guide. If anybody was interested in purchasing that, that was worth the read. Worth the read alone for Ross Uglam's breakdown of Joe Barry's defensive scheme. So if you want to check that out, I think they're still selling those. If you want to check those out, but
and tight end 3 in Game On Wisconsin's rankings.
That they were. So, okay. So who were your first two? Did you have Pitts and Jordan?
No, I had Pitts and Tommy Tremble at 2.
Tommy Tremble. Okay. I had Tremble. So I had Pitts, Jordan, Tremble, then Freiermuth, but I think I could have interchanged any 2 through 4. Brevin Jordan is somebody I haven't talked about. Where'd you have him? Was he 4th?
Yes.
Okay. If Green Bay, I know Green Bay likes him. They interviewed him. That he would be an interesting pick for me as well, but that's beside the point. That's probably a 3rd round type of selection that they could do. But getting back to the offensive, good Lord, getting back to the offensive line. I just think, like you mentioned, Ryan, I know it sounds lame and I know it's sounds cliche and very Ted Thompson dry, but yeah, just take the best player. And wherever he ends up on that, the Packers, there was a story out from Bob McGinn today that said the Packers were offensive lines. They needed offensive line help. They're very thin. I do think it's interesting because technically Lane Taylor was a starter, but to say they lost a starter would be, you're exaggerating. Let me just,
he's played like Lane Taylor is a starting caliber player that hasn't really played for 2 seasons. He
played 2.5 quarters last season. So
exactly. So
you kind of broke it down. Bakhtiari will eventually play left tackle. Jenkins will play guard. I think, I hope, I pray. The center position is Patrick. Then you have John Ryan Jr. and Billy Turner. Could they use some depth? Sure. But every team can use offensive line depth. I think that's why you've seen this run on offensive tackles that we've seen tonight. But Zach, what are your thoughts on the Packers offensive line situation currently, based on what you know and what Brian Gutekunst has said?
Well, we know they value guys who can do a lot of different things. We know they want guys who can just be interchangeable at a lot of different spots. You pretty much just mapped out that whole starting 5. I mean, that's barring anything crazy, barring them picking some kind of starting caliber guard, starting caliber tackle here at 62 or later on in the mid rounds. That's who they're going to go into the season with. And we still don't know really what we have in Jake Hansen or what we have in Simon. I'm not going to butcher his last name, Stepaniak. Stepaniak. There you go.
Yep.
Since I drafted him, I have not known how to pronounce his name. But they still don't know what they really have in those guys. So I think camp is going to answer a lot of questions, really. All that really matters is they have that starting 5 intact. And I am really personally excited to see John Runyon Jr. in a full-time starting role, because in that limited action last year, he was good. I mean, for a rookie stepping in the heat of battle like that, mid-games, multiple times, he looked really impressive, So yeah, and it's also, I mean, I don't want to throw this out there, but whoever's going to be a quarterback, I mean, they got to invest in the long-term future, whether it's going to be Aaron Rodgers or whether it's going to be Jordan Love. So they have to keep that in consideration as well. They still have to find a right tackle that's going to be able to replace Brian Bulaga. They still haven't done that. I know short-term the replacement, like you said, it's Billy Turner, but yeah, that's going to be something that's kind of still unfolding,
Yeah, I think that, we're getting into the latter half here. The Seahawks are picking at 56, and the Packers now slated to pick at 62 overall, obviously. Offensive linemen, there's a few still on the board. There's a couple receivers. Terrace Marshall is the popular name that I can gather from the tweet machine. Tight end wise, Brevin Jordan and Tommy Tremble. Those are two names that come up that the Packers could. I said this, and Andrew, I'm sure you said something very similar to this, but I don't want to misquote you. Tommy Tremble just looks like a Green Bay Packer when you turn the tape on. So if they pick him tonight in the third round, I'm not surprised at all. Not even a little bit. So keep that in mind as we get to the third round here. But the offensive line configuration, like we've mentioned, there's no inclination we have that any of those guys can play. We have a pretty decent idea that John Runyon Jr. might be able to fill in. He did do so admirably a year ago, but at the same time, he's a 6th round pick. And 6th round picks are typically not guys that are high level starters. It's very rare that something like that happens, but he has the pedigree. He came from a big program. All that kind of stuff obviously will matter on those sides of things. Let's look at the position that I don't think has been talked about at all, because it appears there's two that Green Bay could pick in this time frame here, and that's the receiver position. I don't think anybody's talked about the receivers since last year's draft, but what is your guys' long-term? And Andrew, actually, Ryan, I'll start with you here because you've been here for a bit, so we've got to let you get back to your wife and family and all that good stuff. So let me know your assessment of the receiver position as it stands, and would you like to see them add 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 guys before the end of the weekend?
Well, I think they're in a very similar position for wide receiver that they were with cornerback, in that, they don't really have anybody signed beyond next season. So, I mean, I know Alan Lazard's going to be a restricted free agent, so he'll likely be back, but MVS, Equinemius St. Brown, all of the other guys on the roster are essentially gone or not under contract after next year. So similar situation with cornerback, where they need help at wide receiver today, but they need more help at wide receiver for next year, the following year. And it usually takes a little bit of time for those guys to develop in this system. So yeah, I think, if it's not offensive line, wide receiver is probably the biggest long-term need that they need in terms of roster building. So, for me, you've got a couple of guys like we've talked about sitting here that can definitely add to that. I think ultimately MVS is going to be back. I can't imagine that the Packers have been so patient with him, with the inconsistency, to start seeing him actually put it together and become a pretty good weapon in this offense. I know he gets a lot of heck from Packers fans, but if you go back and look at that draft and who we took, who other teams took around the same time in terms of wide receivers, he might be one of the best of the lot there. So I think he's earned himself at least a reasonable contract from Green Bay. I would expect Lazard back. But Equinemius St. Brown, I'd be very surprised if he was back, especially if they add some talent here. So, I think you've got your core that you need to stick with. Obviously, everybody's hoping that Devontae Adams will resign here, given all the drama. But let's assume that he does, and as we are assuming that Aaron Rodgers is coming back, which I full-heartedly think he is. I wouldn't wear this jersey if I didn't think that was happening. But let's assume those guys are back, that they bring Lazard back as a restricted free agent, and that they figure out a way to re-sign MVS to a deal that is probably amiable for both sides. I don't think he's going to break the bank, but I think he's earned a contract. So from there, what's missing? And to me, I've kind of I don't want to sound like I'm on repeat here, but to me, it's kind of like a basketball team. And you've heard Matt LaFleur talk about needing different types of players on the board. So you've got your hard nosed run blocking, clearing out kind of wide receiver in Alan Lazard. You got your big play boomer bust kind of prospect in MVS. You've got your bona fide number one best wide receiver in the game in Devontae Adams, but you do need that jet motion sweep gadget wide receiver in this offense, and a couple guys on the board just sitting there. So if they don't go that route, I don't see, a lot of players that could stack up to a guy like De'Ami Brown or Amari Rogers, later in the draft. So I'm crossing my fingers that they go that route. Zach, I was with you. Rondale Moore was kind of my draft crush. So if they can get a Rondale Moore light, I'll take it at this point.
Well, as we've seen, the Seattle Seahawks, as Ryan was talking there, they just took Dwayne Eskridge, who reportedly from Tony Pauline was somebody the Packers may have had some interest in, had some return ability. That's something that I'm going to look into tomorrow, and I'll get to that here in just a minute. Ryan, appreciate you stopping and chatting with us. You've got some good stuff coming for Game On this dead zone period after the draft, so look forward to hearing that. Keep your eyes on Game On WI on Twitter for details on that. But Ryan, let us know where we can find you and everything that you're doing.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Bowman PWW. I'll be doing lots of fun stuff for you guys. We've got an interesting historical off-season series that we're going to jump into. Mark Beach, the Mark Beach, who wrote The People's Team, an illustrated history of the Green Bay Packers, is going to be a big part of that. So really looking forward to getting to that. And I think it's going to be a fun off-season joining you guys. So get at me on Twitter. I think I'm at a whopping 216 followers now. So, I'm just screaming into the void here. We've done some good things with Packers Worldwide, but excited for the partnership that we're going to bring together.
That we have. So Ryan, appreciate you stopping by and talking here. The Packers just 5 picks away. Be sure to follow along with Ryan. You can follow Ryan on Twitter as well. Make sure you do that. 216 followers. That's not nearly enough. That's almost embarrassing. So tell your friends, tell your family, everybody to find Ryan. And I'm really looking forward to that series with Mark Beach. So Ryan, appreciate you stopping by. We'll see you again.
Cheers, guys. Thanks again.
Take it easy, Ryan.
See it.
Ryan Bowman, that of formerly of Packers Worldwide, now of Game On Wisconsin. The Rams selection is in, and I have yet to see who that is. So if I do find that here in the next little bit, I will let you know. The Rams have taken Tutu Atwell from the University of Louisville, which, okay, talk to me, Andrew, because this is one of those things of, does his weight matter?
It depends. Can you tackle him? Right? Tyreek Hill's weight doesn't matter. I think he's not that dynamic, but he is another player in that mold of Rondale Moore. He's maybe the B+ version of Rondale, that you want to just try to get the ball into space and let him create, and then hope he doesn't break in half when somebody bigger hits him.
So that part gets interesting. Zach, did you have any interest in Tutu Atwell as the Packers have gone throughout, as we're getting closer to their pick here?
No, not necessarily any interest. I think the only 3 guys that I really had my eye on for the Packers was Terrace Marshall Jr., De'Ami Brown, and Amari Rogers. Those are really my 3 guys. I can't truly tell you, or at least any more than Andrew can. Andrew's the guy you want to go to. But so I can't really tell you a ton about Tutu Atwell, but it is kind of, I don't know how these teams value these guys or what their perception of, some of these players are. Because obviously they think differently than we do. But it is kind of odd that he went before Terrace Marshall Jr., is it not?
Yeah.
To me, it is, yeah. And I'm not even somebody that's in on Terrace Marshall Jr. Hold that thought, because we have our newest person joining us, and that is Rob Rieger, NFL Draft Reeks, the king of the Geek Squad, and my partner for draft season of the Pack-A-Day podcast. So my first question to you, Rob, did you start drinking around pick number 16 last night when Zaven Collins came off the board?
Oh man, that was the party time, man. He's such a good fit for Arizona too. That I love that guy, and I think he's going to be fantastic. I thought he was going to drop a little bit because of the 265 or the 465 40.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little nervous about that, but I don't know. I'm going to have to become an Arizona Cardinals fan now. Oh, Tutu Atwell, huh? So that just went down.
Mm-hmm.
That just happened, and that's surprising to me. Kansas City is now on the clock at pick number 58. So it'll be interesting to see where Kansas City goes here. To me, they should just. Did you guys watch the Super Bowl? I think it should be. I know they've signed some guys and they traded for Orlando Brown, but just basically draft every offensive lineman that exists and don't start 5 guards in the Super Bowl, because I still believe that Kansas City was a better team than Tampa Bay. They were just injured and had to start 5. Literally, they started 5 guards in the Super Bowl. Mike Remmers was playing left tackle.
So wait a minute. So the Rams got rid of Tavon Austin, and then they just drafted Tavon Austin, essentially.
Just not with a top 10 or whatever it was they did.
Right? I mean, is there any difference between the two players?
Not much. I guess the difference being draft capital. If you want to think that way.
I think the Chiefs would be a really interesting landing spot for Quinn Miners. They've had some success with small school guys, especially on their interior, and I think he'd be somebody that Andy Reid would like a lot.
I think they have to go defense here.
I looked at, somebody said that there was going to be a run on cornerbacks and wide receivers here in this spot, so that's going to be interesting. The Kansas City Chiefs have selected Missouri linebacker Nick Bolton, 58th overall. So that's another one. You know what? I'm kind of to the point here. It's interesting where when a guy goes off the board that I don't like, I'm just kind of like, whatever. I'm good with it. So,
how did you know that so soon? Like, where are you guys getting your feed from?
Twitter. I'm cheating. I don't care if picks get tipped. I will say this: we do have a no tipping policy when the Packers are on the clock. So when they're on the clock, we will learn.
Okay.
With the rest of you, we have another guest, and we're gonna 5 is not a crowd. But we have Brandon Wisco Brandon. He of the Titletown Lounge podcast with Rhino Alberts. And Brandon, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Really appreciate
it.
That's a loud mic.
Hold on.
You're totally fine. So we'll go through that. Nick Bolton coming off the clock. Carolina, New Orleans, Buffalo, and then Green Bay will be on the clock. So Rob, Brandon, you guys are new to the stream here. So let's get you in and your thoughts. First of all, on Eric Stokes. And Rob, I'll start with you. I know you talked about him a little bit yesterday on 97.3 The Game.
Yeah, I did. The thing about Stokes is that I think he's the thing that I noticed about him is that anytime that he has to change direction, he struggles. And I think it's a correctable thing, but I'm not sure if it's a correctable thing. Like if you look at some of his athletic scores, yes, he grades high. But if you look at the agility portion of his scores, he doesn't grade very high. He was very slow in the short shuttle, and he was also slow in the 3-cone comparatively, to other corners. So it's the one thing I noticed. That, when I was watching some Alabama film, and Devontae Smith just used him. It just all crossed up, and a lot of it comes down to footwork and like learning the proper footwork. It seemed like he was kind of crossing up his feet, trying to recover, and that's the one concern about him. But I'm not sure that it's not a coachable thing. I mean, if you give me a guy that runs 4.29 and has the explosiveness that he has, I mean, they can kind of work with that, agility drills and so on and so forth.
Okay, so there's that. There's those thoughts on that. And that's, my questions, concerns, if you will. And I was able to speak with Seth Emerson, the athletics beat writer for the Georgia Bulldogs today. So check out that podcast. It's on the Game On Wisconsin socials if you haven't been able to do that yet. But that's my concern is, is he able to play on some of those in-breaking type of routes? But it'll be interesting to see because he played a little more man-to-man coverage at Georgia than he did zone. And that's something the Packers theoretically are going to play more of this year. Brandon, what were your thoughts on the pick as the night progressed, everything that was going on surrounding the pick?
Does the mic sound better?
Much.
Okay. Sorry, I'm on a mobile studio here at a hotel with the kids for the weekend. Going into the first round at the first pick in the number 29, I didn't have my expectations for the pick were not like they were last year. Last year we all, thought that they would probably go receiver. Obviously, we were kind of all shell shocked with Jordan Love. So this year I was happy with a cornerback, an offensive lineman, maybe a receiver, had the value been there. I did do a little bit of research with Eric Stokes prior to the draft. I watched a little bit of tape on him. I like how he's a stingy player. He reminds me a lot of Jair Alexander in the way that he covers. His ball skills that you'd like to develop a little bit more. I mean, he did get abused with Alabama, but he also, I mean, he was going up against Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, and I mean, week in and week out. And I think that having that experience, having that competition in the SEC, I like his size. Obviously, everybody loves his speed. I think obviously Kevin Kane's not your long-term answer, opposite side of Jair. So I think that I think it's a great pick. I think Bears fans and the NFL fell in love with the Bears pick, and it kind of overshadowed everything else that the Green Bay Packers were doing. And obviously what's going on with Aaron Rodgers kind of took a shadow to, Eric Stokes took a shadow to everything. And I feel bad for him because his first draft, it selected into the first round, and now he's dealing with Aaron Rodgers drama. But I liked it. I thought you could have went a couple different routes. I really wanted Tevin Jenkins. I hate to see that he went to Chicago. I hate that, Jacob, I'm with you. I hate that Chicago's having probably one of the best drafts they've ever had. I was big on Tevin Jenkins, but I'm pretty happy with Eric Stokes.
So Eric Stokes, the pick here. The Carolina Panthers are about to break some hearts here. They are about to select Terrace Marshall, the wide receiver from LSU. That is the first offensive. I'm totally fine with it. Like I mentioned earlier, my receiver is still on the board, so I'm going to keep tight-lipped as long as he remains on the board. So Marshall, one of those dudes that from a player standpoint, I know he fits the athletic profile. I know he fits some of that stuff. I question his competitiveness, and I think that opting out before they played Alabama, I think that makes that a fair question. People have their reasons for what they did. I don't have a problem with opting out before the season, but I do have a bit of a problem, and I would have some questions if somebody opted out during the season. So that's a question. I think it could be a big deal there, but that remains to be seen what exactly is going to go here. So Rob, let's have you chime in here a little bit here as we're getting closer here to Green Bay's pick. What are we looking at? What are you looking for them to do tonight?
Well, I mean, for sure, Diami is a guy that's standing out right now. He's one of those guys that I feel could legitimately be a number two. I'm not that high on him, but I feel at this point like he would definitely help our team. Nico Collins is the other guy that I really like out of Michigan. He was a guy. I just think that. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this to you, Jacob, but he was a victim of the Shea Patterson syndrome.
There will be no Shea Patterson slander on this.
Where I'm watching this guy run down the field wide open, and Patterson's, I don't even know what he's looking at, and he's wide open, and it just didn't work out for him. But the thing with I guess Stokes or the thing with Jenkins is when I made my what I would do mock draft, Jenkins was the guy that I had in my what I would do mock draft as a GM. I just figured he'd be a guy that you could just set at right tackle and you can just forget about him. He's a solid dude. He started a bunch of games and he has good technique. He's big, and he'd be a guy that'd be so just rock solid in that right tackle role. And he's going to do the same thing for the Bears. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. Now the other thing is looking at line. So I figured. And with actually, the funny thing is about this, and I talked about this on the radio today, is that I've kind of reserved myself to believe that the Packers will never take inside linebackers, linemen, or wide receivers in the first round. And it almost was like therapeutic when I came to that acceptance because I've spent so many times just screaming at the television, why did you take Patrick Queen? Why didn't you take so-and-so? And it drove me nuts. So last night I was like, chill. I was relaxed. I'm like, all right, so it's not going to be a lineman. It's not going to be a receiver. And it's it's not going to be an inside linebacker. So it made it very relaxing. I just figured it'd be a cornerback. I didn't know if it was Tyson Campbell, Asante Samuel, or Eric Stokes, but I figured it'd be a cornerback nonetheless.
All right, Andrew, a few thoughts on Terrace Marshall. We've been here for a little bit, so let's get you on your merry way so you can have some night to enjoy yourself on a Friday night here. But just thoughts on Marshall, and let's get a prediction here for who their pick is going to be. Green Bay's, that is.
Yeah, so Marshall, he's only 20 years old. He's going to have a lot of time to develop. I think he's the heir apparent to Robbie Anderson now in Carolina. So I really, really like that fit. You got to give Sam Darnold as many weapons as you can, and just roll the dice, see if he works. And then if not, you know what, you kick the can down the road and you draft a quarterback at some point in the future. But for the Packers, whatever is going to make Twitter burn the most is going to be my prediction. So Creed Humphrey.
Quarterback. Oh.
Quarterback would be Davis Mills would be the worst possible. I think Creed Humphrey actually would be a really, really fantastic fit. But we'll see what happens. Thanks for having me.
If I had to make a prediction, I'd say Mayfield would be the guy that if I had to, like a gun to my head, Jalen Mayfield.
Well, that'll be interesting. Andrew Mertig, you can follow him on Twitter. He's at Andrew Mertig. Check that out. It's on his name line there. So appreciate you stopping by, Andrew. We'll talk to you again.
Yeah, have a great night, guys.
Take it easy, Andrew.
Go back.
And then, I just kicked Zach out. So that's good. Things are going well. Zach, we'll also get you wrapped up here. The Saints are about to make their pick. You've been here for a little while. Appreciate you stopping by and sticking around with us. We can catch Zach on Open Book on Thursday nights as you guys are wrapping up what the Packers did in the draft here, assuming with all the Aaron Rodgers drama, Eli is still breathing by the time that happens, that he may pass out permanently if the Packers do decide to move on from.
He's taking the Aaron Rodgers drama harder than anybody.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything quite like that, but I get it. I watched it happen with Brett Favre, and I probably would have been the same way if I was on camera. But Zach, the Saints pick is in here. They're pick number 60. What's your thought on what the Packers are going to do here? As they're just 2 picks away.
I know I'm saying all this nonsense about wanting them to draft a receiver here and giving you those 3 names that I really wanted. Now down to 2, obviously, since Marshall's gone. I think they go Quinn Miners here, assuming he lasts through Buffalo. Ignore that loud ding. That wasn't me, if you heard that. I think they go Quinn Miners. I think Owen Reese has pretty much preached the good word of Quinn Miners for like the entire draft cycle to me. So I'm like pretty much fully on board. And the fact that he's lasted now to 62, we kind of knew that he was going to be a 2nd-round pick. There were a couple people that thought he would maybe come off the board, maybe like late in the 1st round. And, the Packers could even like trade out of 29 and get him at the early 2nd. But the fact that he could possibly be here at 62, I think that would be a solid pick, kind of fortified the interior of that offensive line. And they already have guys like Billy Turner, guys like Elton Jenkins who can bounce around and do a lot of different things. And like I said earlier, they want guys who can do that. They value guys who can play a multitude of different positions.
The Packers are currently on the clock. The Saints, they're currently on the clock in real life. As far as what we know, the Saints just took Pete Werner. So it remains to be seen what Green Bay will do. Zach Jacobson, you can follow him on Twitter at @ZachariahJ. He is not actually a dog, as his bio may very well say. But Zach, appreciate you stopping by and enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Appreciate it for having me, Jacob. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good one.
So, man.
Again, Zach Jacobson of Open Book here at Game On Wisconsin. You can find him. He's a machine over at Packer Report. That dude does all the breaking news, so I'm thankful for him stopping by and getting some time. Brandon, Green Bay's on the clock as far as we know. So with Green Bay being on the clock, what are your thoughts on what they could potentially do here with this pick? I mean, I know I'm asking you when we don't know all of the picks, but, that part gets interesting.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, Rhino and I did a mock draft as well, first couple of rounds, and I'm kind of with Zach. I know he's off the show now, but I do like Meinertz there. But I kind of like Davion Dixon, defensive tackle out of Iowa. I think obviously you have arguably one of the best defensive tackles in Kenny Clark. But your rotational pieces on that defensive line aren't really all that great outside of Kenny Clark. So I wouldn't mind seeing Davion Dixon, who's kind of developing. Obviously, he's a run stuffer. He's over 305 pounds, but also is developing quite a pass rush. I believe he had 5 sacks last year in a shortened season. So I would be okay. Honestly, to be honest with you, my expectations for the draft are just I'm just kind of ready for the outbreak and the heartbreak and the crying and the drama that just every pick that the Packers have is critically scrutinized. So I'm kind of leaving it open and not having setting a guy in my head. I fell in love with Tevin Jenkins last night, and I prior to last night, but wanted him there at 29, and then he falls to the team that I dislike the most. So. I'd be okay with Meinertz, and I'd be okay with a defensive tackle, maybe Milton out of Texas. I believe he's out of Texas Tech, something like that, somewhere in Texas, or Davion Dixon out of Iowa.
Davion Dixon out of Iowa. His name's Brandon. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Brandon. So I'm going to butcher it. Brandon Snide. You can catch him at Titletown Lounge. Follow him on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. Brandon, appreciate you stopping by. We'll have you on again before the end of everything.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's Brandon Snyder.
Just
The Packers are
you and
officially
I.
on the clock. No, it's not just you and I. We've got company. Jake Morley's here.
Okay.
And some Packers royalty. We've got Fred Thurston in the house tonight. Mr. Thurston, first of all, thank you for joining us on a little bit on a bit of a whim. So thank you for that.
Well, I got Sanjay in the house, so he's poking me to get on here.
There we go. That's just Sanjay. I'm getting in. Yeah, Sanjay is logging in. So Sanjay's in, and we've got our group here. So the Packers are on the clock as far as we know. We just don't know who Buffalo has picked as of yet. The pick is in according to my television.
Carlos Basham.
They took Boogie Basham, which may save the Packers from themselves. If you're wishing for somebody else, he certainly felt like a Packers kind of pick. And that means I am officially turning the chat away. This is a no spoiler zone. You will not spoil this pick. So, Fred, as we have the Packers on the clock here, what are you looking at? I know the Sweep Studios was telling me Diami Brown, but I don't know if you are in control of that.
Yeah, I don't. You know what? A huge run on tackles. We all watched that happen. So it's looking like that's not potentially the situation. However, we don't know. The Packers are always really good at doing what none of us expect or none of us think. I still think you have to consider contractual situations, and a receiver is someone that you have to look at. So that's the next guy up. That's the next guy that I think makes the most sense physically for the Packers to take as a receiver.
And we actually have another friend in the house, and we have tight end of the Green Bay Packers, Jace Sternberger, joining us tonight, fresh out of three different things. So, Jace, I know I said there wouldn't be as many people in here tonight, but we had a few people join before you did. So we're just going to hang out for a little bit, if that's okay with you.
That's perfectly fine with me.
All right. So the Packers are on the clock. And my first question I have for you is, this was the time when you were picked 2 years ago. So what was your draft experience like on day two?
Man, it was I'm trying to think of how to word it, because I really honestly don't remember when I got picked, because we were about 2.5 hours into our party by then, and we had alcohol there, so it was pretty the nerves were chilled. It was very comforting and calm. No, I'm kidding. It was fun. My whole family was there. I didn't know, but I had a really strong feeling that the call was going to come that day. So, put it in God's hands and just enjoyed my time with my family, because that's what all the advice I got from older guys in the draft was just, enjoy draft day. It's, one of a kind. It's you'll always remember it. So I was just, trying to enjoy the moment with all my friends and family.
Alrighty. So did you know that Green Bay was interested? Did you have any pre-draft interest from them?
Yeah. So I actually met with J.O., my position coach. I met with him the most at the combine, like 3 or 4 times. And then they were my first 30 for 30 visit. When wherever we were allowed to start visiting teams, and so I had a great visit, loved all the coaches and stuff. It was a cool experience, cool vibes, and so I was really pumped whenever Green Bay picked me.
So they knew about that. Jake Morley is also here, and the Packers are on the clock. Jace, your team's on the clock, so the pick is in. Do you guys follow this stuff? What are your guys' thoughts on following along with the draft, or is it just like this is who management's picking and we respect that?
Yeah, that's all it is. I think that's the O-line coach though in the war room. So maybe.
So an offensive lineman could be at play here. Obviously,
I think that was him. I couldn't tell. Like I said, it was quick.
Yeah, there's Rashawn.
Is Stanovich in there? Who I just saw.
That might be a hint.
Yeah.
All right. Does Rashawn butcher the name? Come on.
Draft classmate, obviously, of Jason over here with Rashawn Gary as well.
Oh, jeez.
He's got the same glasses on.
Let's see what we got right here.
Dude, can we just talk about this chair? So ridiculous.
I mean, hey. It's like a deafening silence here. Sorry, fellas.
Oh, you're fine.
Rashawn, stop talking. Josh Myers, the center out of Ohio State, is the pick. So the Packers are potentially replacing a center from Ohio State with another one. Corey Linsley obviously moved on to the Los Angeles Chargers, and now Josh Myers jumping in to add some competition to that front and potentially start at center for the Packers. Well, not start, I should say, compete at center for the Packers this year. So, Morley, let's jump in. What are your thoughts here?
So I'm just looking at if I mute this. I'm just looking at my list of guys. Am I echoing? Of guys that I really thought would be good fits in Green Bay, and Josh Myers checks a lot of those boxes for what they typically look for. Super athletic kid, big kid, and he's 22 years old, young dude. I think what's interesting is one, I like Josh Myers a lot. I think he's going to be able to step in right away and play on this offense, depending on what they want to do with Patrick. But I think what a lot of Packers fans, the doom and gloom is going to be, fellas, what about the Wisconsin Whitewater kids that they didn't draft? Quinn Miners. I think that's what Packers fans are going to look at, and that's going to be the crux here of this pick. But I think they got a good player, big solid kid, can get to the second level, will fit nicely into that kind of that zone scheme that they run.
Rob, Fred, let's chime in here. Let's move. Obviously, we got Jason. We got him for a limited amount of time here. So let's chat a little bit about any questions you guys have for him.
How are you feeling health-wise, Jace? Are you doing all right?
I'm feeling great, man. Thanks for asking, actually. Like I said, the head's good. Strep, it's all gone. Have had a very enjoyable training off season. Feel actually normal again, to put on weight and just work out and run routes and be a football player for once and not have to worry about COVID. Well, I mean, still taking precautions, but I've already had it. So, I mean, not saying I can't get it again, but you know what I'm saying. So it's been good.
So how's a virtual off season going? Like, are you I don't know what the situation is. Are you guys having practices on site, or are you doing everything virtual?
Everything's virtual right now, and it's actually really smooth just because we had to do it last year, so we kind of went through trial and error, figuring out what worked best last year. And then, so this year, like I said, we have a young coaching staff, pretty tech savvy. So like they've made it fun, and like the installs are really good. So I'm enjoying it right now.
I just have to say, you have an awesome social media presence, man. I'm just saying, you're one of the guys that I look at. I'm like, wow, this guy, he brings it, every time. So, thanks a lot for that, because a lot of guys are boring on there.
Yeah, that's the thing. I really don't try to be like this ha ha he he, but it's just like I'm kind of a smart aleck, and it's like it's funny. I post a picture of me wearing just out in the town, whatever, and it's like, oh, you don't post enough workout pictures. And I was like, okay, so I post a workout picture and then I get bashed. I'm just like, all right, I can have fun. I can talk a little trash. I'll be okay.
And that was hilarious. It was something along the lines of, if I was as strong as the size of your forehead or something like that, we'd be in good shape. That was
yeah. Like dude just came out and like, Jesus, dude. I was like, I'm sorry today. I'm sore. Like I've been working out. I've gained weight since I was 20 years old. I have gained some weight. Like the dude is like, you've been in the league for 5 years now and haven't gained muscle. I'm like, I guess, man. Like I feel like it.
How often does that happen? Just stuff like that, where people are in your mentions just saying things that you're like, man, shut up.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a bit. Some days more than ever. Like if I ever say something, if I ever post anything about football, it's always get more about it. But for the most part, it's not too bad. I mean, it's just kind of comical. Sometimes people just kind of set themselves up where it's just too good not to say something back. Like I don't take anything personal because it's like I don't really know any of these people. It'd be different if you said it,
Well, I mean, we're friends now, right? So
that's all I'm saying. It'd be a little different,
Right. Okay, Fred, you're here. I don't know if you know this, Jace, but Fred's actually the grandson of some Packers royalty here. So I don't know if he wanted me to flex about that, but I just did. So Fred, go ahead and jump in. Anything you got for Jace?
I don't know. That was a little bit of a boast there, man. I don't know if I deserve all that, but I'll ask you this, Jace. There's obviously a lot of drama going on right now. How much do you involve yourself in that, and do you concern yourself with it going into the season, or do you just gotta get ready to play, right?
Yeah, I just gotta get ready to play. Like I said, Aaron's a great dude. Love him to death. Like I said, I've learned a lot from him, but like I said, I talk to him about as much as you do. So I mean, it's not like none of this stuff that I really have like not any control, any say, obviously. So it's just like I'm just watching it like I'm here too, just keeping up. But just focus on what I got to do. Like I said, pretty cliche answer, but just whenever my number's called, just getting ready to go. So that's really all I can worry about.
A good one on that.
For sure.
And yeah, we'll focus on the draft here. Obviously, the Packers take a center from Ohio State. For those that missed that, Josh Myers is the newest Green Bay Packer. Going through on that, Jake. Obviously, I think you're best friends with everything on this. So what are we thinking at this point?
I actually have a question for Jace about this because I'm talking about kind of what the scheme that the Packers run, and when you look at a guy like Myers, who's a super athletic center. I mean, obviously Corey Linsley was that dude. Like he could get to the second level. He could kind of be that point man in the zone blocking scheme. But how much of that stuff is it, is it like specifically your guys are running Oz right, Oz left, or is it something that you guys kind of mix up a little bit more? And how vital is it for those guys to be that type of athlete at that position?
I think, like I said, like you kind of hit it the nail on the head with Corey, how athletic he was always getting to the second level. And then like Elton, like I said, whenever he plays center, like we've all seen how athletic he is, how athletic Dave is. Like I just feel like obviously as all of our O linemen have been very athletic, it's just really opened up everything in the run game. I don't want to speak for any of the coaches by any means, but like, I don't know what their intentions were of our run game, being successful, but like, I think with this caliber of O lineman being super athletic, it's just opened up, like a can of worms on where it's kind of unlimited what we can do in the run game now. And so, like I said, again, that was a huge credit to Corey. Cause like I said, there's some ridiculous blocks playing super fast linebackers where he's still getting something on the nose and then moving up without losing sleep. So it was really credit to him.
And another thing I'll say too about Packers offensive line in the last few years is Packers don't really miss. These dudes that they've been bringing in have all been studs.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of, as I'm looking at this and you kind of think, Josh Myers, that's a name I wasn't really expecting here. But if there's one team I think in the NFL that knows what they're doing with the offensive line with Coach Steno, like, it's like, man, this guy's going to be good. Like, I just put it in the bank. He's going to be a good player. But
yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's the other thing. It's kind of like, people can get wrapped up in the draft on what position we're taking here and there, and if it was a good pick or not. But it's like these guys kind of had, about 4 or 5 months, some even a year, just to strictly do draft prep on needs that the team needs and players that we need, and making sure they pick the right player. And so, I mean, it's kind of like, that's kind of why they get paid to do what they do. And so, I've really never, questioned certain picks because, like I said, I feel like it's, we always put that's our number one team rule is we put the team first. And so, like I said, I feel like any guys that we pick is always going to make sense in the long run.
Rob, we've had you here for a little while. Let's let you get one more thing fired in here for Jason, then we'll let you get back to what you need to do.
Perfect, man. Yeah. I'm when I look at, kind of the team and the breakouts for this year, I see you as that guy that's kind of like that sleeping giant on the team that, maybe people have slept on, but I was so excited, about you. I studied this draft for a long time and, coming out of Texas A&M, I was really excited about, the fact that, we had you on the team, and I'm just looking for you to kind of just really jump out this year. I really do. Like that's and I'm excited to have you on this, but keep working hard, man. That's all I can say. I don't have a question for you, but just keep working hard.
I appreciate it.
Keep doing it, man. And you're one of my breakout picks for this year that it's just, people are going to be like, wow, this guy really came into his own his third year in the league, and go to him, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Hey, no problem. Have a great night, man.
You too.
That's Rob Rieger on the far end. You can follow him on Twitter. He's at NFL Draft Reegs, and you can catch him with me every Thursday morning on the Pack a Day podcast. Rob, I appreciate you stopping by, and he didn't care to listen to me far enough on that, so that's okay. But we got a few more people in the gang here. Sanjay Murthy, he of the Freezer podcast. We've got the Freezer podcast joined all together. And Sanjay, actually, oddly enough, your first segment with Game On was called Jason the Gang. So you're now here with Jay Sternberger, my first.
Oh, yeah, right? I know, right? Exactly. How's it going, Jason?
Let's go. How's it going?
Not too bad, man.
Tampa Bay on the clock. They just took Kyle Trask, so potentially the heir to the throne, if you will, of Tom Brady there. So a Florida guy. Jace, are any of your friends or anything draft? I'm not too well versed on Texas A&M football like I should be, but is anybody you know potentially getting drafted this weekend?
Yeah. So I'm honestly surprised they picked Kyle Trask. I was hoping my boy Kellen Mond was going to get
Of course, yes.
because he's everybody's kind of knocking him for some stiffness, but once people get to know him, he's a great dude. And said he's a military kid, very disciplined. But enough about that. So we got Kellen. Then we got that linebacker. His name's I don't know what they have it on the program, but we call him Buddy Johnson. His real name's Devodrick though, but it's Buddy Johnson. Linebacker, inside linebacker. So he's really good. And then we got Bobby Brown, defensive tackle. And then we got Dan Moore, Carson Green, Jared. We just got some O linemen too. And I'm pretty positive all of them are getting picked. I think that's the only people we have in the draft this year. Next year we'll have some day ones though, so I'm excited.
Somebody, I think it was Matt Miller, said A&M might have the most talented roster going into the 2021 to 22 season. So
yeah, that boy Jimbo Fisher is pretty good at recruiting. He kind of knows talent.
Worth the money, right?
NFL draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Tyson Campbell, DB, Georgia.
That happened a while ago.
Oh, that was me. Sorry, guys.
Oh, I was going to say that was a really long time ago.
Yeah, I was like, holy
sorry, guys.
Shit.
Can we go back in time? Did somebody get one of those mulligans to start the draft over?
All right.
That was impressive.
All righty, Jake, go ahead. I know I cut you off a little bit earlier, Morley, so go ahead and jump in.
No, I was just going to say, you never know with the draft too, with all these guys, people like us, that will be sitting here saying what we want to say. Because, Jace, I know when you came out of A&M, that was the big knock on you is like, can this dude block? And then in your rookie season, you're putting guys like Jadeveon Clowney in a body bag in the playoffs, just in his business and blocking. So you never really know what these guys are asked to do in college. And I think especially the tight end position is such a unique position to make that transition from college football to the NFL. Just because, and you can speak to this too, just what is being asked of you compared to being at A&M, now being in Green Bay. It's almost like playing a new position, I feel like, sometimes for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, almost to a new position to that extent, but I would say just the demands that come with it. Because, I'm trying to think of a quarterback who was playing when I was a rookie. It wasn't like I just got thrown into a system with, I don't even know who I'll say this. I wasn't playing for the Bears. Mitchell Trubisky, saying like Aaron, has some standards. There was some things you can and can't do. Had to earn his trust. And it was like you weren't just getting put into an NFL system. Like you're getting put into, 16-year Hall of Famer like Aaron Rodgers system. Like there's way things are supposed to be done, and there's things that you have to learn before you can just, hey, here's the keys. Like go draw. Like have fun. Don't wreck it. Yeah. I was just saying this, like I still feel like there's a couple of teams that I could be playing on right now and like really succeeding, but it's just like I wouldn't trade that for anything because it's like I feel like I'm part of like one of the best organizations, and like there's a reason like you pay your dues. Like literally Bobby Tonyan, like perfect example. You know what I'm saying? Like 2 years he had some success, but not necessarily what he wanted to do, but trusted the process and got his opportunities and made the most of them. So it's like I feel like that's what's beautiful about our offense. And it's like the more you learn the detail of it and everything that comes with this position, and just really paying your respects to it, the more successful you'll be.
Jace, it looks like you're going to see your guy Kellen Mond twice next year. He's going to be a Minnesota Viking here. That's not on the TV yet, but that's what's been thrown around. So he's going to be an opponent after being somebody that you played with. So that's at least a little interesting.
Round 3 just started.
That's what it looks like, yeah. Sanjay, go ahead and jump in, man. You've been here for a little bit, so.
Yeah, it's all good. I've just been listening, I'm hearing what Jace has to say. Jace, I do have one question for you. So if obviously being on the field is probably your favorite part of being, in the NFL, but if there's something else that's not on the field that, being a part of the Packer organization, what's like your favorite part of being a Packer?
For sure, like the community being, like I said, I'm from Oklahoma, a small state in general. So it's very blue collar. Everybody kind of knows everybody. Like I got my gas station worker. I'm a big gas station goer, connoisseur. So I got my workers. I know all of them by first name, and they all know me. Like when I go in there and what I get every time I'm there and whatnot. So definitely just the community feel of it.
Nice.
So let me ask you this real quick. Quick Trip. What do you think about Wisconsin Quick Trip?
It's solid, man. It's definitely a good thing. If you're ever in the Texas area, you should definitely try a Buc-ee's. If you haven't been to one, they're pretty extreme. They're massive. Oklahoma has a lot of on queues. So Quick Trip is nice. I need it to be a little bigger space because I'm kind of used to the more supermarket type things. But
All right.
No, it's a good place. I love it. Like I said, I have a Quick Trip membership card and everything.
So that part gets interesting there. Jace, we appreciate your time. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on. It's draft party weekend, and you've got some it looks like a beverage or two ready for tonight. So first and foremost, appreciate you for stopping by, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Sounds good. See y'all.
Jace Sternberg, tight end for the Green Bay Packers, number 87 on the program, and number 1 as far as I am concerned with everything like that. So we're gonna wrap up here a little bit.
I'm not. I wasn't impressed with that Quick Trip answer. I mean, I feel like Quick Trip deserves more respect. Not number 1 in my heart anymore, man. Broke my heart.
There you go, Jace. If you're still watching, I'm sorry, but Thurston and Sanjay are probably not too thrilled with that as the Wisconsinites here. So, guys, real quick, Josh Myers, the Green Bay Packers selection in the second round. Sanjay, I didn't have you here, and Fred, I think you were here when that happened. But what are your thoughts?
We kind of talked about it a little bit before it all started. It's a pick of need. There's some offensive line situation. We've got some aging contracts. I think it speaks to the last draft when we got those 3 guys. They're not as confident as maybe we thought they would have been in some of those guys like Stepaniak. I think Hansen and Runyon have more upside there. But they felt like they needed someone now and someone that can step in, and I think he's that guy. I think Morley hit it on the head. He's a young guy. He can probably make that move initially right away. So it's a solid pick, and we're in a year where I think we were looking for luxury picks, and here we are with quarterback issues and potentially a transition in the Green Bay Packers organization. So is it sexy? Is it great? Is it fun? Is it what we probably all wanted to see? Maybe not, but I think it's the right pick, and it's a good, solid player. So we're just going to have to take it and run with it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, everybody talks about value and could you have gotten this dude later and all that other stuff. But really, if Green Bay picks good players, you don't care. And as a fan, at least you don't care. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. The Packers need to fortify their offensive line. This is a guy who the Packers, the media is actually speaking with their director of college scouting right now. And he's saying he could play guard. He did play some guard there, but I'm going to guess he's going to go ahead and be a center. Sanjay, thinking ahead here with Myers in the fold now, does this end any of the Elton Jenkins to center stuff?
I think what you have already is a future All-Pro. You just keep him where he is. It's not like you would ever think about moving Quentin Nelson in his direct position if you had to need somewhere else. So I think, and I don't even, not that Quentin Nelson actually played center or anything, but, I think this is a great confirmation that, yes, you keep him where he needs to be. Obviously, I think you still need to worry about what's your future at tackle. But, I like this pick, to be honest with you, because 6'5" for a center, that's massive. So, obviously, if he does transition to guard, we'll see there. But, like you said, you probably will be center. But this is interesting to see, where John Runyon falls. This is interesting to see where, Jake Hansen falls. Where do these guys that have been in camp and they've actually had some repetition in this system, where do they fall in camp? And this is good to have bodies, though, honestly, because we've seen a few years back where offensive line was just completely always a makeshift. Even in the NFC Championship game, I mean, you saw it. And then obviously these last 2 years, we've seen, nice offensive line depth, and it's been nice to have like a healthy offensive line until obviously Bach went down. So yeah, I think you keep Elton Jenkins there, and you solidified probably the best guard, at least in the NFC, for years to come.
All right. Yeah, that part gets interesting. Jake, we've talked about this a lot on the Gold Zone. What are your thoughts on just this pick kind of in general and what it means as the trickle down effect, if you will, that Sanjay kind of just talked about here on the offensive line?
Yeah. I mean, you look at him and I think, and I'm just trying to, cause I just tweeted that I really like Josh Myers, and I think he is such a Packers type, and the trickle down effect is maybe he's a guard. When Elton was picked, he was a center. But Myers has played some guard at Ohio State, and like has already been mentioned, he's a 6'5" kid. Like, he is not your typical undersized type center. He is very much, he's the size of a tackle. He doesn't have the arm length, I don't think, but and people are asking me over Creed Humphreys, over Quinn Miners, over those guys. Yeah, and I think the answer is because he offers some versatility to this Packers offensive line. Like, is this your first go around of watching the Packers pick offensive linemen? Like, they have a type. They like dudes that can play multiple spots. That's Josh Myers. And Quinn maybe wasn't that guy. I think Quinn maybe is pigeonholed to being a center in the NFL. Creed definitely is. Creed is a center. He's not going to move around. And, I think both those guys are tremendous football players. But when I look at what the Packers want to do, it's Josh Myers makes a ton of sense. I just tweeted as well. He is very much a eat your vegetables type pick. He is a guy that I think by the end of his rookie season, no one's going to be disappointed that they picked him, because he's going to be just a solid dude for this team, a la Elton Jenkins when he was picked. I remember when he was the pick in the second round, it was kind of the same deal. Like, oh, okay, like they took an interior offensive lineman. When they're good, it's nice. It's nice having those guys. This is not your Ted Thompson's Packers, where they think they can just go out and plug in a bunch of, seventh round UDFA type guys in guard and just be fine with it. So the Packers would know what they want to do. They want to be able to run the football. Everything they do is predicated off of that in this system. So they're going to keep that offensive line room strong and healthy. And it will be interesting, though, Jacob, to kind of see how does it all play out. Is Myers just going to be handed the center job? Is he going to compete with Lucas? Is he going to have to earn it like Elton did? It's going to be really interesting. That's going to be a fun one to watch.
That it will. And you guys saw the NFC Championship game, obviously. And Fred, you've mentioned this several times on Twitter and the Freezer podcast and everything, how, we talk about all the sexy stuff on the outside and the cornerbacks and all that stuff. But the reality, you win the game up front. And Green Bay lost that game in the trenches. So where are you thinking now, as Green Bay obviously is clearly trying to build their team from the front back?
I think it starts again on the flip side here. We talk about the trenches, and the defensive side of that is where we probably should shift our focus to now. Morley, I think you nailed it in every aspect there. When it comes to the offensive line and what the Packers do, they're very good at evaluating that value and understanding potential when it comes to versatile offensive linemen. So I shift my focus now on the defensive line and finding somebody that can help contribute with Kenny Clark. Something that I feel like we've kind of lost interest in the last couple of years. And I don't know, maybe I'm on an island by myself when I think this, but I don't know if Lancaster and Lowry are the future here. We go against a lot of teams in the NFC that have pretty dominant front sevens, front fours and front threes especially. And ours just does not instill fear in anybody. I think our secondary is beautiful. I'm not too concerned about that right now. And I think our linebacking core is sneakily good. But when it comes to those down linemen, obviously Kenny Clark is a masterful man. But can Dean Lowry and Lancaster in those latter months of the year, in those playoff months, do enough to change a game? I don't see it. So I'm hoping that they address that somewhere. And again, that might not be sexy, but I think it's always sexier than offensive line because nobody thinks offensive line picks are sexy. And as the resident offensive lineman from Sir Sanjay over here, it is one of the most important things you can do. So, I think shore up that offensive line a little bit more, which we've done. Now you look at the defensive line. Let's get those trenches figured out, and the rest will fall into place.
That's why we keep them around, Jacob. That's that bloodline right there. All day in the trenches.
Oh, I love it because not on the same level or anywhere close, but I also played that spot. You said nobody thinks offensive line picks are sexy. This guy does. I love offensive linemen. So
there's always
we're all
love
in on
for
that.
it.
Absolutely. Sanjay, let's get a couple. We're just about over the 2-hour mark here. I want to let people get ready to enjoy the third round tonight and kind of get to their Friday night, if they will, and let you guys get some drinks going and everything like that. But just some final thoughts, the Packers on day 2, what they've done today, what they did yesterday, and what you think they could do the rest of tonight.
I mean, I think it's a great start. I mean, the Eric Stokes pick was just a phenomenal pick in the sense of a need that we obviously had glaring, and you just got another speedster, which is just a nice little pairing with obviously Ja. And then, obviously today with the center, another need that obviously we're filling with, Lindsley gone. But it just seems like now, I mean, at first I was like, oh, wide receiver. Let's just get a wide receiver. Devontae could not be back. We don't know. And, we need to find that guy because is Lazard or MVS the guy that's going to take the reins? Maybe, I don't know. But I do think that there should be a receiver at least tonight, maybe, or possibly tomorrow. We did take 3 in I think day 2 and day 3 of 2 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's good. It's a good start. And, it's just such a weird feeling today or this weekend just because there's something over our heads, obviously.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to really take this in this year, like normal years where you're like, oh yeah, all right, this is good pieces to help, 12 succeed and get us to the ship. But now we have a different thing to think about. So it's a different feeling, obviously, this weekend, but I still love the draft.
And that I do too. And I'm looking forward to the rest of tonight. Fred Thurston, I'm doing this wrong. Fred Thurston, Sanjay Murthy, they will be with you guys tomorrow night, starting at 7:00, doing a recap show. Is Matt coming or is he still doing? Okay,
he's on the airplane right now.
Excellent. So Matt will be back, and we're looking forward to having the full Freezer crew for Saturday night. Thank you to Andrew Mertens. You were on the sticks a little bit. Say hi to the people, Andrew.
Hey, what's up? I actually just saw now too. All of my top 10 tackles have been taken finally. Jalen Mayfield for the Falcons. Was a little surprised. Some of them took a little bit longer than I thought they were going to, but again, that's the NFL draft.
Exactly.
So a little notch in your belt there. You guys, I appreciate you guys following along. You can find Fred Thurston on Twitter. That's his handle there at FThurstonXXII. Sanjay Murthy is at Sanjay X Murthy. Andrew Mertens _Andrew. And you can find myself. I don't have my Twitter handle, so I get a banner at Jacob Westendorf. And obviously follow Game On Wisconsin on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Enjoy the rest of the third round. Want to thank all of our guests for stopping by. Rob Rieger, Zach Jacobson, Sanjay Murthy, Fred Thurston, Jay Sternberger, and so many more guys that were able to stop by tonight and do the draft party with us this weekend. And then last night, obviously, as well with the boys from Lombardi's Bar hosting. So look forward to the third round. Thank you guys for stopping by. We'll see you next time.